Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I am recording this on March 1st. It's been approximately a month since I've been doing some recording, so thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. Please help support the work that I do by sharing the links, asking your social media to follow me. You can follow me on X, also on GETTR, TikTok, Substack, Patreon, YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. On my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. So there's many ways to follow me. You can follow my work on my website. You can watch the live broadcast under Broadcast Live. You can also listen to the archive of my podcasts in audio format. I also have a new feature called Paper under Broadcast that deals with the news of the day or of the week. So thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. Well, the big news that happened was that the Ayatollah was eliminated. The rumor is that the Israelis did it. Maybe the United States did it. Who knows? But there were definitely operations in conjunction with Israel and the United States against Iran. So we have now the supreme leader eliminated. 40 additional leaders were eliminated at roughly the same time. And the question is, when will the IRGC capitulate? Now, what's interesting in the news is how many media outlets in Europe, in the UK, in the United States, also in the Middle East, I would say about 80% of them are demonizing Trump, saying this is an illegal war and that it's going to be, it'll escalate to a regional conflict that will last forever, and this is going to be just like Iraq and Afghanistan. I don't think so. I think there's something a little bit different here. Now, I personally believe, from a metaphysical perspective, that Trump is a blessed individual. You don't have to like him. It doesn't matter what you think. It matters what God thinks. And for some reason that's beyond our realm of understanding, he is a blessed individual. And he ended up moving the operations forward and allowing for the death of the Ayatollah. This goes back all the way to 1979. You remember the Iran hostage crisis? Do you also remember the bombing of Beirut, of the barracks, the Marine barracks in the early 80s? Iran has been a problem for the United States and for the region for a long time. It is about time that we had a president that didn't kowtow and that we actually moved the ball forward to eliminating the cancer that's in the region, and that's Iran. Now, how long will this last? We don't know. But this seems to be happening much faster than many people predicted. The energy markets are probably going to be elevated tonight and tomorrow. So I'm doing this recording on Sunday in the morning. We'll see what happens in Asia with the Brent crude future price. I suspect that it's going to be elevated, but I don't think it's going to be elevated for too long. So when I do my show tomorrow, we're going to go into detail, and that's live, about what's going on with the energy markets. But I do think that there will be a blip of maybe $2.50 to $3 per barrel for the futures price. But I don't think it's going to stay elevated for very long. But it depends on if the IRGC digs in, how much of a regional conflict this may grow out to, because they are attacking Dubai, Saudi Arabia, United Emirates, Israel. So it is a regional conflict, but will that be sustained and will it get worse? There hasn't been any really strong drone swarms. The United States just used, at least officially, one-way drones, which are like kamikaze drones, in their operations. So this may be actually a testing period for drone technology, AI technology, and also to shot over the bow for China, because the United States is projecting to China saying, hey, do you really want to go into Taiwan? So we're showing China, there's a very strong possibility that your regime collapses if you try to take Taiwan. So this is kind of a showcase and a test bed of what the United States can do. So there's many dimensions to this. But the big dimension is the elimination of the Ayatollah. This goes all the way back to 1979, and we've had presidents, Carter, Reagan, George Bush Sr., Clinton, George Bush Jr., Obama, even Trump 1.0, and Biden. All of those administrations failed in terms of getting to the root cause of the problem in the Middle East, and that was the terror financing and the theological ideology of the Ayatollah. Now, it took 2.0 Trump to actually wake up and get the job done. And I'm glad he did. I've been saying this for a very long time. He should have done it when we used the B-2 bombers to blow up those nuclear facilities. But it's about time. This goes all the way back to 1979. Now, the sad thing is that you have people in New York and you have people across the world. Some of them are celebrating, but there are also people that are saying that Trump is doing an illegal war. And it almost seems as if the protesters are on the side of the Iranian theocratic regime, not the Iranian people. So this goes back to what I was saying just after October 7th of 2023. Ultra liberals will start eating their own tail. They're going to be protesting on things that will fly into their face. And this is a perfect case of it, where we literally eliminated a person and that theocratic regime that was financing terror for decades and was moving on a path of nuclear weapons. So if you're going to protest against Trump and rally for the Ayatollah, you're on the wrong side of history. Why would you do that? Oh, Orange Man is always bad. Nothing Trump can do could be right. That's the logic of AOC. That's the logic of Chuck Schumer. That's the logic of the Democratic Party. That's the logic of Al Jazeera. Why is the Democratic Party actually aligned with Al Jazeera? I don't understand this. All right, before we start going over some of the news, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great products that I offer. If you get these supplements that I have on my store, and you take them regularly, you're going to slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system. I have a lot of different products. These are products that I take to help to slow down the aging process, boost up my immune system, and then be healthier. You do this regularly, and it's going to work for you. So please go to my store and get such as the structural nano silver soaps. I have it in charcoal tea tree, lemongrass, and also in peppermint. These soaps will help to improve the health of your skin. It'll help to neutralize. Again, it's made from structural nano silver soap. So, all right. Now, I also have structural nano silver toothpaste. Structural nano silver toothpaste helps to neutralize, whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, and reduce inflammation. When you're reducing inflammation and you're neutralizing, you're improving your oral cavity, your oral health. When you're improving your oral cavity, your oral hygiene, you're improving your cardiovascular health by reducing plaque formation and helping your valves. So this is a very high quality toothpaste. There's nothing that you're going to get that's better than this. That has no fluoride. So get the structural nanosilver toothpaste, and again, it neutralizes. Super important during the cold season. And max 35 and cleanse, or max 14. Take a teaspoon a day, every day. Max 35 is 35 parts per million. Max 14 is 14 parts per million. Cleanse is 30 parts per million. They're all at different price points based on your affordability. But take a teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds, and swallow it. What this will do is neutralize, improve the health of your oral cavity and your oral pharynx, reduce inflammation, and improve the health of your epithelial cells and maintain your mucosal barrier. So it's going to boost up your immune system. It's going to slow down the aging process. And again, it neutralizes. So it's really important that if you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well during the cold season, take a tablespoon or two a day. Once everything's all clear, go back to your maintenance dose of a teaspoon a day. Get the max 35, max 14, or cleanse. Very high quality. Take it every day. Slow down the aging process. See, a lot of people don't realize that if you actually don't get sick, you're actually slowing down the aging process. Okay, so with that, let's listen in to Al Jazeera.
If this disruption continues. Not only there has been an impact on oil production, but the conflict has also affected the non-oil economic activity in GCC countries, tourism, and keep in mind there is significant amount of imports that come into GCC countries, into, for example, Jebel Ali port in Dubai, which are affected and will be affected by the blockage of the Strait of Hormuz.
Donald Trump and members of his Trump administration place a great deal of emphasis on how the markets behave. Well, markets obviously opening up tomorrow, particularly Asia to begin with. What are we likely to see?
A spike in oil prices for sure. And I think it would be somewhere around 10 to 15% to start with. But how far it will go and for how long depends on how long this.
He's talking a $6 to $7 increase. I don't think so. I think it's going to be a $3 to $4 increase. I don't think it's going to last for very long.
That's what the both sides.
Habibi, we're grateful to you for bringing your expertise to Al Jazeera. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has confirmed that the Assembly of Experts will choose the next supreme leader in 1 or 2 days.
Well, this is obvious that this assassination would make his confrontation more complicated and even more dangerous. It is absolutely unprecedented and a big violation of international law that a leader of another country is assassinated by foreign forces. So that would make this conflict or this war of aggression by Americans against us even more dangerous, more complicated, and would add perhaps new aspects to that. As you know, Ayatollah Khamenei was not only the political leader of Iran, but it was a high-ranking, religious leader for
So you're noticing, okay, this is the Iranian foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, I guess it's pronounced. But the Ayatollah is dead. Trump basically said to the people, it's time for you to take your country back. But the ones in power through the IRGC, guess what? They're saying, oh, he's dead and we're just going to get a new leader. We're just going to have another theocratic regime. It's no big deal. So it doesn't seem like they're in reality. They seem like they're in a distorted reality. Now, for Trump to succeed, it's not just killing the Ayatollah. It's making sure the theocratic regime doesn't get resurrected. So that means that the IRGC must capitulate.
Of course, we cannot hit any target in the territory of the United States, so we have to deal with their bases in the region and the facilities or installations they use in the countries of the region.
I want to bring you first just a line that is coming out from the Reuters news agency quoting the CENTCOM, which is the Central Command for U.S. operations in this region. He says the U.S. says 3 U.S. service members have been killed in action as part of the Iran operation. We'll get more information. That will bring that to you as we get it. Let's go to Mohammed Val in Tehran. We heard from Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi there. He was speaking to Al Jazeera exclusively. The sense that we get is that the Iranian leadership are very keen that to retain control of this situation in terms of the sense of calmness and to try to reassure people, particularly in Iran, but also around the Gulf, that they are in control and that this situation is being managed.
Yes, there are several things here going on at the same time for the leadership here. First, the succession, which, as the Foreign Minister mentioned, should be expedited so that the country feels stable again and that the people are reassured that continuity is guaranteed. They have also this problem of the neighbors who are angry and they say they have been attacked by the Iranian army, and they are trying to talk back to the Iranians about this. He has addressed that situation. And also Iran is dealing with the double aggression, as they say, from Israel and the United States, and those U.S. military assets that are scattered across the region, both in the seas and also on land. So lots of things at the same time the leadership here is dealing with. On the one hand, they want to continue. They want to ensure the continuity. They want to make sure that a new leader is elected or selected, and a provisional council will be in place in the interval between now and when the supreme leader is chosen. But also at the same time, they are trying to reassure the people that everything is in place for the country to defend itself, and that the army is ready to strike back against the Americans and Israelis at any time and in any place from which Iran is attacked.
We're talking about a situation, of course, that whenever there is a supreme leader who is appointed, they are still going to face the same pressures, social pressures that we have seen, particularly over the last year. We've seen protests on the streets, anti-government protests, but also protests based on the fact that the economy is struggling and the sanctions are in place. That is going to be a very difficult thing for the leader to have to deal with, isn't it?
Yeah, I was a bit surprised when in your intro you mentioned that the foreign minister said that maybe 2 days a new supreme leader might be chosen. That's going to be the boldest act of defiance by the Iranian leadership here, because we remember the scenario that happened in Lebanon when just days after the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, also his supposed successor was assassinated. So a new supreme leader.
So it's three service members that were killed and 5 seriously wounded. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start playing Fox News here. I'll continue following this live feed from Al Jazeera.
Bookstore is like a portal.
The other point, it's steampunk.
And we wanted our Wix website to be too. I'm Jenna.
And Josh, we're the owners of
A time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran.
We are facing an act of aggression, and obviously we have every right
to defend ourselves. History unfolding in the Middle East, the U.S. and Israel carrying out an unprecedented military operation, crippling Tehran's leadership by taking out Iran's supreme leader, along with dozens of other top officials.
The devastating blow to Iran's Islamic regime, a result of one of the largest military operations in the history of modern warfare, with 900 U.S. strikes in just 12 hours, using 2 aircraft carriers, 3 destroyers, and B-2 stealth bombers, and striking at least 500 Iranian targets.
We've already seen dozens of U.S. military bases targeted with retaliatory strikes as Iran vows revenge.
President Trump urging Iran not to return fire or face, quote, force that has never been seen before.
The sentiment for Iranian Americans across the globe, elation, celebrations erupting after the strikes came down, and what could be the best hope for relief from the Islamic regime's reign in decades. We began this morning with Jennifer Griffin to walk us through this history-making mission. And good morning, Jennifer. It's really quite remarkable when you look at the total package.
Griffin, very remarkable, but also a complicated picture emerging this morning. The Iranian leadership that did survive, and there are a few leaders that did survive, the president, as well as Ali Larijani, who's very powerful in Iran, have threatened the U.S. and threatened to attack 27 U.S. bases across the Middle East. And we've been seeing a lot of those missiles flying into neighboring countries. A mob also tried to storm the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, and Pakistani security forces used batons to push back an angry crowd threatening the U.S. consulate in Karachi, Pakistan. Both Iraq and Pakistan, of course, have large Shia Muslim populations. And British Defense Secretary John Healey said 2 missiles had been fired towards Cyprus, where the British Army has service members stationed. In Tehran, following the announcement of the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, there were spontaneous outbursts of celebration on the one hand, but also some crowds chanting today in downtown Tehran, "Death to America." Not clear if these were spontaneous or organized protests, but you can assume that the remnants of the regime and the IRGC will want to present a united front, suggesting that the regime will survive. The man to watch is Ali Larijani, the head of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. He just gave an interview in which he described the killing of Ali Khamenei as extremely painful, threatening revenge. Quote, "The United States and the Zionists have burned the heart of the Iranian people, and we will burn their hearts." Meantime, Iran managed to fire more than 300 missiles at the UAE, where the U.S. has a military base at Al Dhafra, about the same number as it fired toward Israel. Actually, about 100 ballistic missiles were fired toward Israel yesterday, according to the IDF. So this was actually more missiles fired at UAE. Iran has expanded its response, even firing missiles at Oman, which tried to negotiate that last-minute nuclear deal and avoid war. Qatar received about 65 Iranian missiles since yesterday, and Bahrain approximately 35. And explosions have been heard in eastern Riyadh, Saudi Arabia today. Israel, meantime, has increased its airstrikes and says it will now target Iran's nuclear facilities. And just moments ago, hit the headquarters of the IRGC and barracks in Tehran. That is where the massacre of last month's Iranian protesters was organized and carried out. Smoke has been seen rising from near Iran's state broadcasting facility in Tehran. And in terms of the U.S. operation yesterday, the U.S. military, we learned, carried out 900 strikes in 12 hours. 10 to 15 senior leaders of the Iranian government and military were killed in that Israeli strike on Ali Khamenei's compound. Multiple sources tell me that the start of the operation, the joint operation, had to be moved up based on intelligence and this target of opportunity, a meeting at Khamenei's compound. Quote, "There was a deliberate decision to accelerate the timeline." That is why the US and Israel took the unusual decision to strike during the daytime to achieve the element of surprise and to target this meeting. Normally, the US military would not launch an operation like this during the day. The meeting accelerated the timeline, I'm told. This was a massive, wildly bold daytime attack, a senior US defense official told me. It caught the senior leadership off guard and on a Saturday morning during Ramadan and on Shabbat in the daytime. We hit the senior leaders right out of the gate, I was told. But some survived, including, as I mentioned, Ali Larijani, the man to watch, and Iran's president, who issued a statement just moments ago. Griff?
Yeah, Jennifer, you mentioned what we're watching, what Larijani will do now. And, I think we've focused so much on the IRGC, but would Larijani possibly try and go after or try to activate the Basij? People haven't talked much about the Basij, and it's important to understand that is a strong militia that can be sympathetic to the IRGC within Iran.
Absolutely. The Basij are like the internal police, this state police that are really very vicious and were responsible for a lot of the killing of those 32,000 protesters who were killed in December and January in Iran. The Basij are still a factor. Remember, we've talked about this in the past, but in the early days of the Iraq War, a lot of those security forces just took off their uniforms and floated away and then reorganized and came back and began carrying out terror attacks. Now, the difference this time is the U.S. will not be occupying Iran. They don't have ground forces that are going in, so there won't be any targets inside Iran. But those Basij and the paranoia that's been created over decades of theocracy and state control and authoritarianism in Iran is going to it may be one of the reasons you're not seeing people come out quite in the large numbers that you might expect after such strikes on their behalf. But I think people are scared, and they have a right to be scared that they were slaughtered in the last 2 months. So what you're also likely to see, Griff, is the IRGC launch through proxies, through sleeper cells around the world, targets of opportunity. They tend to fight asymmetrically with terror attacks, and that is what I would expect to see: assassinations, terror attacks. But it won't happen immediately. It'll be when we let down our guard. And
remember what I've been saying since November of last year. I stated that on September 11th, 2026, that's this year, in September, there's going to be a curse on this earth. And that everyone is going to get affected by it. All right? No one can hide from this. Now, Purim is starting tonight, March 1st. And it's March 1st and, not March 1st, March 2nd, tomorrow night, not tonight. March 2nd is when it starts. So March 2nd and March 3rd. So there's a reading of the Megillah, the Book of Esther, at sundown on March 2nd, and also during the morning and afternoon before sunset on March 3rd. All right, that's Purim. Now you have to remember, what's the story of Purim? It's talking about Haman being killed. All right, and that Esther, the Queen Esther, is convincing the king that Haman is bad, and Haman was trying to kill the Jews. Now, in a strange, really weird way here, okay, the king, and from my interpretation of this, is God. Esther is the Jewish people, all right, the representative, the Shekinah, all right? It's like the spiritual part of the Jewish people. Haman is the Persians. It's the Ayatollah. We're literally living through the Book of Esther. All right. Now, what happened on October 7th? That was an attack on Simchas Torah, coming right out of Sukkot, which is a major holiday for the Jewish people. All right. So this is all tied together between Purim, Sukkot, Passover, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah. They're all tied together. All right? Passover starting April 1st. So, and it just so happens that Trump, if he keeps with his itinerary, is going to be in China from March 28th to April 2nd. Who knows if he's going to cancel that? I don't know. I think it really depends on what happens in Iran. But all of this is happening between Purim and Passover. Now, if people have been paying attention to me during this period of time, you have 6 months that are strong for Jacob. You have 6 months strong for Esau. Esau is bad. Jacob is good. All right. So you have February, March, April. That's the apex of strength. April, that's when Passover is. May, June, July. And then Esau is going to start getting stronger in relative terms to Jacob. That's August, September, October, November, December, January. Now think about it. What's the apex of Esau's soul root strength? It's the third month of the cycle. All right, August, September, October. Now, if you pay attention, now because it's based on a lunar calendar, there's a little bit of a wiggle room between the months. But September and October are major events that have taken place in world history where there was terrorism. So people need to pay attention to this. All right? September 11th, 2026, which is also when Rosh Hashanah starts on the Sabbath, where the shofar can't be blown. We have seen a miracle take place with the Ayatollah being killed and so much of the leadership being killed in this strike. Now, we had soldiers that were killed. 3, it seems. 5 seem to have been wounded. There probably will be more. There's going to be collateral damage. This is going to go on for a few days or a few weeks, maybe longer. Depends on what the people of Iran want to do with the IRGC and how steadfast the IRGC will be. But we saw a miracle that took place on the eve of Purim. All right? So really keep this in mind, that if you're going to take the stance where you're going to be negative to the soul root of Jacob, you're going to be cursed on September 11th, 2026. We just saw a miracle that just took place. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the lozenges and the drops that I have for the cold season. This will help to boost up that immune system and neutralize. It's made from structural nanosilver. So you can get it in orange splash with vitamin C. You can also get Manuka honey and lemon drops, cherry, and also blueberry. Again, it's made from structural nanosilver. It'll help to neutralize, help to improve that oral cavity. Perfect for the winter season and the allergy season. Get a few bags for your household. Be prepared. You're going to need it. And also structural nanosilver gel. Structural nanosilver gel. This is dual purpose. If you have a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn, put it on there. It'll help to heal it quicker. You can put this topically on your skin daily to improve your skin health. And this will also help to neutralize. If you're not feeling well, or if you're around people that are not feeling well, put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your eyes, around your nose, around your ears, lightly coat your nostrils. They'll stay active for 5.5 hours. It's dual purpose. Make sure you have some at home. Be prepared. And if you want to save some money, use discount 5, all caps, discount and the number 5. And you get $5 off any order. please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the great supplements that I offer.
I think the strategy right now, from what I am observing, is that Iran is firing missiles at all of the states surrounding in the region, all of the states that host U.S. military bases, trying to create so much chaos that there's maybe pressure at the UN or elsewhere calling for a stop to the war. And if they think they can just survive these initial strikes and then regroup, that is their strategy at this point. But I'm not sure it's going to work, because it's really mobilized all those strikes on UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia has just mobilized those nations to prepare to engage Iran at this time.
Jennifer, there's been a lot of people commenting at the level of intel that the U.S. and especially Israel had prior to this attack, that it's really been impressive. So they've taken out this leadership. You talk about the leaders that are left behind. Based on the intel that they have, I mean, do they think that this B team, or I don't know, maybe this is the C team that's left behind, do they have the ability, the authority, the capacity to do what the A team could do? I'm just curious if that was taken into account. Like, why weren't they also taken out? And then also the security, this special security forces that you and Griff were talking about.
Well, I think, first of all, Ali Larijani would be part of the A team. So some of the A team did survive. And that is what's dangerous in these kind of strikes. We've seen with Hezbollah and elsewhere that there are usually follow-on strikes. And usually the person who moves up in the rankings, they then have the bullseye on their back. Obviously, the U.S. and Israel have excellent intelligence. This could not have been carried out without human intelligence on the ground. They've been mapping these sites that they targeted for months, if not years. But in terms of the human intelligence that would have led to knowing that a meeting was taking place of 10 to 15 top leaders, I mean, you can't underestimate the impact, and also the impact of killing Ali Khamenei, who is the spiritual leader. That was, literally, as Ali Larijani said, a knife in the heart of those who followed him. So this was a very significant strike. It is not over, and there are still remaining leaders, and certainly they're going to be very careful about how they move around. But as soon as the U.S. and Israel can suppress the air defense systems, and they're in the process of doing that, they're going to have a lot easier time than flying their air forces over Iranian territory, and then it becomes a lot harder for those leaders to hide. But that is still a few days off, I'm told. And in terms of the besieged, in terms of the IRGC, I mean, you're talking thousands of people who are in, if not 150,000 people who are in those security forces and who are believers, true believers, and who are willing to die, and suicide bombers and whatever have you. That is very hard to target. You can target their headquarters, you can target their leadership. But this is complicated. And remember, there are a lot of allies in Iraq. Iraq has a lot of Shia militias. We just heard that some of them have fired some missiles at some of the neighboring states as well. And they also are firing at a U.S. base in Erbil right now. So this is very complicated. There are Shia Muslims around the world there are many who will celebrate the end, if this in fact is the end of the theocracy in Iran. Many of those people who went into exile, the dissidents who left after the Shah's regime fell, but there are also many who supported that regime and believe that this was a strike on Shia Islam.
Jennifer Griffin, great reporting last 24 hours especially. Thank you.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, now to Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst live in Tel Aviv. Good morning, Trey. What is going on there now?
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. Throughout the morning, we've heard air raid sirens sounding across Israel's second largest city. The Iranians still trying to respond. In the distance, you can still hear some of those car alarms going off after those incoming missiles were intercepted overhead. We are getting some new video from the Israelis, who launched a fresh round of strikes into the heart of Tehran this morning, going after a very specific building. Exclusively, an Israeli intelligence official tells Fox News that the building you see blown up here in the Iranian capital was used by the IRGC as a command center during the demonstrations earlier this year, as a place to order the crackdown against protesters. This official says that the specific location was used to command the massacring of protesters. Again, though, the Iranians have been responding over the past 24 hours. Overnight, we arrived at a scene of a direct missile impact here in Tel Aviv. A building was completely destroyed, and for blocks, there was damage just due to the blast radius from this explosion. One woman was killed in that building. Another woman nearby died running to a shelter. And when you step back here and you look at the amount of air defense that's being used to shoot down these missiles, it's not easy for the Israelis, but so far they have been quite successful. We do know Ali Larijani, the Supreme National Security Council leader in Iran, is threatening to renew strikes on Israel and regional countries, saying that Iran fired missiles at the United States and Israel yesterday, and today we will hit them with a force they have never experienced before. Well, President Trump is hearing those threats directly and warning the Iranian regime to stand down. The president posting to True Social overnight saying Iran just stated that they are going to hit very hard today, harder than they have ever been hit before. They better not do that, however, because if they do, we will hit them with a force that has never been seen before. The region waiting to see what comes next. The exchange of fire continues here on the ground, and the majority of the Israeli population, 10 million people, spending most of the day in bomb shelters. Guys?
Trey, obviously nobody has covered this more closely than on the ground than you have. Is there anything, what if anything, have you been surprised by in terms of the response, not necessarily by Iran, but by Iran's allies and proxies?
Well, the Iranians are directly targeting not just Israeli civilian population centers, but also Gulf countries. There is significant damage in Qatar, in the UAE, in Bahrain, Kuwait. And it shows that the Iranians, as Jennifer put it yesterday, really miscalculated their response, because now they are drawing in regional countries that maybe before were hesitant to allow the United States to use their airspace or even possibly directly participate in the strikes against Iran. And
Iran, one, is trying to target bases that are in different countries that are hosting the United States. That's one. But also, if you pay attention to some of the leadership, like the ministers from Iran, they're trying to make this a Western versus Islamic conflict. Western culture versus Islamic. By bringing because he kept on saying, our brothers, we don't want to attack you, our brother. So Iran feels as though they're on the ropes and that they need other countries to help them to fight against Israel and also the United States. Now the question is what will UAE, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, what will they do? Chances are they're not going to fall in line with the Iranian IRGC, and they'll either stay on the sidelines or allow or participate, let's just say, stay on the sidelines. They either are going to stay on the sidelines, I think, and just let the United States do their thing and the Israelis. But if things get out of hand and the IRGC hits civilian infrastructure in, let's say, Saudi Arabia or UAE, that might actually embolden them to align more and participate in operations against Iran.
There's a lot of questions on the table about whether or not these countries will get more directly involved. The Emiratis today were warning that they will not tolerate these missile barrages against their countries, and civilians are being injured in these Gulf countries, allies of the United States. And so that is certainly surprising. But when we look at these threats from the Iranian regime, it's almost as if they are not taking President Trump seriously. And we know that the Americans and the Israelis were working together to meticulously plan this operation that started with a series of airstrikes against Iran, decapitating the Iranian leadership. They took out Iran's supreme leader and 40 plus senior officials in the Iranian regime and the IRGC. And yet still you have leaders like Ali Larijani from Iran's Supreme Council that are saying they're going to hit Israel and the United States even harder. And so this tough talk doesn't last long. We saw similar statements from Iran's supreme leader. He's now dead. And so the president gave Iran a diplomatic off-ramp before this war began. He offered them an olive branch. He said, we're willing to make concessions. I was on a background briefing with a high-ranking U.S. official yesterday who said we offered the Iranians so much, and yet they still were not willing to come to the table in good faith and make a reasonable nuclear deal. And that's not even to mention their ballistic missile program or their support of regional proxies. And so what's left of the Iranian regime leadership, they're still threatening the United States and Israel.
But Trey, isn't that the danger that at this point it's existential for Iran that, they almost have nothing to lose or don't feel like they can go to the negotiation table and last as leaders there? I want you to answer that question. My other question is, given the fact that, President Trump said this is only going to last a couple of weeks, and that's what the hope was, does the fact that these other Persian Gulf countries, that they've been attacked, have had damage and also casualties, does that increase the pressure on the American administration, on the Trump administration, to take care of this quickly before it gets, out of hand?
Great questions, and I'll answer here in two parts. The first question having to do with sort of the broader regional considerations. And look, the Iranians have the ability to launch ballistic missiles. They have short-range ballistic missiles that they are now using to target these Gulf countries. They have drones. They have anti-ship missiles. We understand a tanker was hit in the Persian Gulf overnight. But despite these efforts, they have actually responded in a relatively weak way when you compare their response to the 12-day war. They simply aren't able to launch these ballistic missiles in massive barrages that they could do before. And that is largely in part because the United States and Israel have worked together using their intelligence agencies to monitor the coast of Iran. They've had drones flying back and forth, watching to see if these ballistic missile launchers were going to pop out from underground positions, and then they're hammering them with airstrikes. And so the Iranians are getting off what they can, but they can't sustain this for weeks. This is a matter of days before, first of all, there's air superiority over the entire country of Iran for the United States and Israel. But secondly, Iran's ability to launch large-scale ballistic missile attacks, which is largely seen as their biggest lever to pull. The other question has to do with these Gulf countries and the ability of them to respond. It would not be surprising if they get more directly involved. But what we should note here is the trust that was developed in the region over the past year. We have heard from Gulf leaders speaking about the American administration in a way that they've not talked before about U.S. presidents. President Trump's been able to do something in the region using two of his most important members of the administration, his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. And they've been able to use back channels to develop a new sense of trust among these Gulf partners. And that led to not only support for the ceasefire in Gaza, Board of Peace participation, but also close coordination as it relates to this war. And so we have to imagine these conversations are continuing each and every day. And I've been talking with regional officials, diplomats in the Gulf, even as recently as yesterday, and they appear confident in President Trump's decision-making and what will come next in this conflict.
All right, I'll tell you this, Trey. If we see Emirati fighter jets striking targets in Tehran, that will be a game changer, to your point about the allied Gulf region.
Stop taking meeting notes and click them.
All right, let's see here. Let's go to BBC. See if, okay. It looks like there was also an attack on the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier, but it seemed as though whatever was attacking it didn't come close in hitting it. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, support the work that I do, but also if you follow my advice and take these supplements every day, you're going to slow down the aging process, you're going to get healthier, and boost up that immune system. So get the vitamin B complex. This is super important to take if you're 40 years of age or older. This will help to boost up your energy levels. And by boosting up your energy levels, you're slowing down the aging process, because what's part of the aging process? Less energy. Well, if you're boosting up your energy levels, you're going to have more ATP, you're going to be more active. So vitamin B complex, the first 4 B vitamins, helps with the electron transport chain to boost up that ATP. In addition, vitamin B complex revs up your cellular metabolism, and vitamin B complex helps to protect your neurons. Super important. You need to protect your neurons, especially when you get older, and especially because of the post-2020 aftershock. Olive leaf extract, dual purpose. This is going to help to bring down inflammation, help to control your lipid profile. When you do that, you're boosting up your immune system and you're reducing plaque formation. So you're helping with your cardiovascular health. Olive leaf extract is something that you should be taking every day. Boost up that immune system, help with your cardiovascular health. Resveratrol slows down the aging process, soaks up free radicals, helps the health of your mitochondria. Your energy levels will go up. This will also help with youthful gene expression and help to get rid of cells that are in senescence. Take resveratrol every day. It stacks really well with C60. And magnesium and zinc. Magnesium and zinc, dual purpose. It's going to help with the efficacy of vitamin D3. It'll improve the workings of D3. Magnesium and zinc will help to boost up your immune system. And magnesium will help with brain function. Super important to take every day. So please go to my store and get the magnesium and zinc. All right. Now let's listen into the BBC.
UK troops stationed in various areas that have been targeted. We know that UK troops have all been marked as safe and accounted for. And the Defence Secretary, John Healey, has said that he is still concerned, though, about the increasingly indiscriminate attacks from Iran widely across the Middle East, and concerned that they're putting British personnel and people at risk. He was speaking to the BBC's Laura Koonsberg, and he commented as well on the death of the Supreme Leader Khamenei.
So no one will mourn his death, not least those friends and families of the tens of thousands of young protesters that were murdered on the streets of Iran in recent months. But make no mistake, this is a regime that he has run for decades as a source of evil. It has murdered its own citizens, it's exported terror, including to Britain. And my concern now is the increasingly indiscriminate attacks from Iran widely across the Middle East are putting British personnel and British people, civilians, at risk. And so my first job as Defence Secretary is to protect those British people, civilians and military, our British bases, reinforce regional security and do all we can to prevent further regional escalation.
It could potentially get a whole lot hotter, could get a whole lot worse, this, because clearly the Iranians are absolutely livid about this, the Islamic Republic regime. Although, of course, many of its citizens, many of Iran's citizens, are thrilled about this and have been cheering and celebrating because he represented so much of the oppression that has ended up killing so many of their relatives in the previous couple of months. I think a lot depends on how much weaponry Iran has got left. It has promised a regret-inducing punishment, as it puts it. And there are ways in which Iran could lash out at the US naval force that is this armada that is offshore. Although that armada has got incredibly powerful weapons and very good defenses, one of the things that the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps Navy has been practicing for years is something called swarm attacks. And that's where they try to overcome the defenses of a warship, a single warship, with a lot of drones, torpedoes, missiles, so that the sheer number, the sheer volume overcomes the defenses. Now, if they could sink a US Navy warship, that would be a huge blow, even though the retaliation from President Trump would be huge. And indeed, President Trump has threatened them today, with, don't even think of hitting back. But they will, for a matter of pride, I think, want to do something about this. Now,
Hi from London. This is BBC News. The United States says 3 service members have been killed in action in Tehran's operation with 5
Okay, I'm going to go to Al
hours
Jazeera here.
Israel and
They're
Iraq.
talking about the attack on the Abraham Lincoln, but it wasn't hit.
And they will not be crushed. They will crush the enemy and give it a strong lesson that it has never seen in its history.
Let's go back to Alan in Washington. Is this bad news for President Donald Trump politically, Alan?
Yeah, we saw people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who of course was one of his big supporters, being very critical of the war and saying that the worst thing that could happen would be for American service members to be killed. Donald Trump, as I said, campaigned very vigorously on being the anti-war president, saying that Kamala Harris was likely to lead the United States into a war with Iran, and that could possibly start World War III. Now he's got to explain to the American people why American servicemen died. He accepted that that was going to be a possibility when he made his video announcement just hours after the operation was launched. He said that there could be casualties. That is a consequence of war. But Donald Trump, when the planning was going on for this, I'm led to believe that something he kept saying was he wanted it to be like Venezuela, or he wanted it to be like the attack on Iran in the summer, which of course were both hugely successful military operations, but radically different from what is being planned here. Donald Trump has talked about how this operation will go on as long as he sees fit and until it achieves the goal.
Tel Aviv, and now in Bitchute. We have lost a lot of people and loved ones, and I express all my condolences. And we wish a speedy recovery to all the injured. We are currently in a battle. We are using all our means and all the capabilities of our armies in an unprecedented way so that we can guarantee our safety and our existence. And with the help of the United States and our friend, the President of the United States, Trump, I've been able to do what I have tried to do since 40 years in order to bomb this regime.
That was a pre-recorded statement from Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu talking after an Iranian attack on the city of Beit Shemesh, in which at least 9 people were killed. Let's get more from Al Jazeera's Noor Odeh, who is in Ramallah in the occupied bank, and we joined that a few seconds into that statement. What else did the Prime Minister say, Noor?
Well, the Israeli Prime Minister, Adrian, really focused on the message that assassinating the supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei, was a very important success, that this is a promise that he had made to the Israeli people to keep them safe, to push back against the Iranian government and the Islamic Revolution, and he delivering. But he did also admit that these were difficult days, especially given the news out of Beit Shemesh, where 9 people are confirmed dead, but the rescue workers are still going through the rubble of the building that was impacted, and there are fears that people are still trapped under that rubble. So the casualty toll could rise. Benjamin Netanyahu, acutely aware that he can capitalize on the support and on the win, if you will, of assassinating Khamenei, of taking out up to 40 commanders in Iran's leadership. But that can only take him so far. He would have to answer to Israel's ability to defend its citizens, to Israel's stockpile of air defense missiles, to its ability to sustain the financial losses of declaring a state of emergency and keeping people in their homes, not in their workplaces. So this is one more message, the 3rd or 4th, I believe, in the past day or so since Israel launched these strikes, trying to communicate with the Israeli public to keep up that image, that posture of Israel being victorious, Israel being superior to its enemies, for lack of a better word, and to Israel being on the road to achieving its desired goal of toppling the Iranian regime. Of course, almost at the same time, we heard from the former chief of staff of the Israeli army, Gadi Eisenkot, who said Israel cannot topple the Iranian government just by bombarding it. And this is really where the Israeli opposition will capitalize. Nobody's going to be opposing a strike on Iran, but people will question Netanyahu's methods.
No, many thanks indeed. Let's go back to Washington. Our White House correspondent Kimberly Halkin. Alan Fisher was telling us just a few minutes ago, before we broke away, for that statement from Benjamin Netanyahu about how politically the deaths of 3 U.S. servicemen will be bad news for the president. He's heading back to Washington later on Sunday. Are we expecting to hear from him?
So far, the U.S. president and the White House have not released any updates that would indicate the U.S. president is scheduled to speak to the American public. What he has been doing thus far has been to project his statements on his social media platform Truth Social. Not only that 8-minute video when Operation Epic Fury began, but he's also done follow-up posts where he has threatened Iran, should it retaliate, that it would be met with a force never seen before. So the U.S. is clearly projecting a message of deterrence. But at the same time, Alan is right. There's no question that the U.S. president is going to have to explain now the first casualties as a result of what the United States and Donald Trump has been projecting. That has been an operation that has been defensive in nature and preemptive. In other words, what we do know is that the U.S. president in his 8-minute video tried to prepare Americans that there would be loss of life, not only saying we may have casualties, that often happens in war, but building the case that this was necessary in order to protect the United States, even as the United States has not offered any evidence of an imminent threat from Iran. The U.S. president justifying Operation Epic Fury by saying that the service members are risking their lives to ensure Americans will never be threatened by a nuclear-armed Iran. As we know, this operation came as the United States claimed it was simply negotiating with Iran to limit its nuclear program. We were told that before this military operation was launched, that peace was in reach. But now, given the fact that the U.S. has given up on peace, at least for now, there are going to be questions from the American public about whether or not there was enough time given, given the fact that there have now been American lives that have been lost.
Kimberly, many thanks indeed. Mohammed Saloon is an assistant professor in international politics at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. Has the US and Israel underestimated the ferocity of Iran's response to these attacks?
I don't think so. I think both parties are prepared for what's going on now. I mean, on the US part, they have been preparing for this for months, and probably since last June. And we can see that
it's about time that we actually had a president that was going to knock out Iran. You know, and it's not going to be easy, but it's going to happen. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. Get the collagen. Collagen, well, it's dual purpose. It's going to help with the health of your skin, your nails, and your hair. Help with your musculature, your bone density, and your cartilage, your joint health. Take it every day. This is a powder. It's a month's supply. You can mix it with soft foods like hummus or yogurt or even applesauce. I mix it with hummus. You can mix it with water or milk or a smoothie. Some people even put it in coffee. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take the collagen and also do some resistance training. This is very high quality. The typical amino acid profile is shown on the screen here. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And also get the probiotics on my store. I have 2 types, the veggie cap version and the powdered version. By taking them every day, it'll help to improve your gut biome. And by improving your gut biome, you're improving your immune system, you're boosting up your mental health, and you're boosting up your cellular metabolism, your overall systemic metabolism. So please go to my store and get the probiotics. Take it every day. Super important to help to slow down the aging process and to boost up your immune system and to get healthy. Good health starts at the gut. That's what I wanted to say. please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Let's go back to the BBC.
Dave, that ship has, well, the two strike groups have layered defence. What doesn't have layered defence, of course, are the ships that were approaching the Straits of Hormuz. So MERS, the shipping container group, have just said that they need all their ships to stay in place. They won't come through the Gulf right now. But two ships, we understand, have been hit in the last few hours. There is now a very distinctive threat to shipping in the area.
Yeah, which is, critical when it comes to the economic consequences of shutting the Straits of Hormuz.
Shutting the Straits of Hormuz, or hitting oil refinery or oil production facilities, upstream production facilities in the region will jack up the price of Brent. So, because of this issue with the Strait of Hormuz, this is going to increase oil prices. Risk is starting to build up in the region. So we should see, I think, a $4 increase in Brent. Now, there was an individual earlier that we were playing that were saying that was going to go up to about $7 a barrel. I don't think that's going to be, but it might. It could. Anything could happen, especially if the United States ship is hit. But it doesn't look like it has been. Let's continue on with BBC.
Found for the Ayatollah. Here's Cottrell from BBC Persian.
The replacement could be found maybe in the next day or two, in fact. The experts assembly, which is formed of about 86 very senior clerics, they can meet tomorrow if the situation allows, and they can choose either to have a collective leadership or a single leader. They can do either because it's in the constitution. It allows for a collective leadership, i.e., choose 3 or 4 clerics to do the job or something, or choose one single person. And don't forget that these people's single job is to choose the next leader. And they have been working on that. And Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader, had told them basically to choose somebody who would pursue the same line as before in support of the revolution. So I assume there are a number of people, 3 or 4 or 5, however, how many there may be.
The question mark is whether they're alive. We're getting statements from the president, but yesterday I was sat here saying we're about to get a televised statement from the Ayatollah. So we can't trust the information that is coming as to who remains in position. And the wave of attacks, as we've heard from the IDF in the last hour, is targeted at the regime.
Yes, but not those senior clerics. I think those senior clerics are more or less safe for the time being if they don't get caught up accidentally in one of these bombing raids that we're seeing left, right, and center in Iran today, particularly.
Cottrell, our special correspondent from BBC Persian, and of course, since we spoke to him, we have indeed heard from President Pezeshkian, so we know him to be alive at the moment and part of that interim council that will decide the succession. An Iranian official says 153 people have died after a girls' school in Minab was hit in yesterday's strikes. That is according to Iran's judiciary-affiliated news agency. Another Iranian official previously said the school...
I'm going to go to live now. Looks like they're talking about protests, maybe in New York.
And support of the Iranian people. Before we head to break, let me just raise the audio for a moment and we can listen.
This is in France.
I did want to just raise the audio here as we like to bring you these live looks and events happening all around the world as hundreds of people are taking to the streets in Paris, France in support of the Iranian people. And we do see flags from all around the world as part of this rally. We're just going to step away for a brief moment right here on Live Now from Fox, continuing to follow all of the breaking news developments out of Iran as Operation Epic Fury continues. We'll be right back.
Get this intelligence on the ground. You were part of this. Is this a success of many years of investing in that intelligence?
Very much so. And again, very much joint with Mossad, with other services too, of course, including the BBC, the British MI6 and others. Everyone has worked together on these over the years. The specific intelligence this time, I suspect, came from a combination of Mossad and CIA, and perhaps some of the signals intelligence elements that support them as well. And really, the overall campaign is a result of decades of work. In fact, when I was the Central Command commander back in 2009, we developed the plan to destroy the Iran nuclear program, many features of which are part of this campaign, although obviously the 12-day air campaign used some as well. So there's been decades of work focusing on specific targets on the missile program, on the other retaliatory means that Iran has, and indeed on the security force leaders, headquarters, and other elements.
And in terms of the succession, the picture that you built on the ground through that human intelligence, does that suggest that there are people in the regime that would be more pragmatic, perhaps appeal more to Western governments than those who are currently in direct line to the succession?
I think there probably are. The question is, will one of those people be chosen? Or will one of those break off and try to have the disaffected elements of the security services and population rally to him? That is
I'm going to go to
right now.
I want to listen to Al Jazeera. They might be talking about oil here.
And the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Oman was in DC, and he was before that in Geneva talking to both parties. And then the very same minister had to go on TV talking about the progress of the negotiations and trying to give a positive message standing by Iran to the last minute. But obviously the negotiations failed, and now we are in the midst of the war. So the United States is not signaling that they want to sit with the Iranians, and vice versa, the Iranians as well. They're asking US and Israel to
20% are hardliners, 80% are, again, a bit more pragmatic, the charlatans. Could one of those step up somehow? Although I'm not sure that will be the selection by the process that will come together, the conclave, if you will, that selects a supreme leader, noting that this has only happened once before and it's many decades ago. But we can certainly hope, but I'm not sure that that particular outcome is yet the base case.
On a scale not seen since
decades. At the intersection, it took 3 weeks to get rid of Saddam Hussein, but it took decades to put Iraq back on an even keel, and that was large.
Food to the great uniter. This is fresh food right out of the Gulf. It was just swimming earlier today or yesterday. Not only is it the seafood, but our produce, all the great farms. There's so many places that make it so easy to show off this area.
The US AI painting unleashes hundreds of agents against your site, attacking it to try and find vulnerabilities. What's amazing about an AI pen test is it can find
who were not given a job and who, of course, formed their own militias to take on American forces. Now, you surged in, I think, around 30,000 US troops to try and get a grip of that. You've a very good idea of how difficult it is getting rid of a regime. Can it be done in Iran? without a ground force there to do it?
Well, very much depend on who it is that might emerge, again, around whom the population, which is so outraged by the leadership driving the economic Iran into a ditch when it should be one of the energy superpowers of the world with the second largest natural gas reserves and the third largest crude oil. And just back to Iraq for a moment, I was also privileged to be part of the invasion as a two-star, and we made some extraordinary mistakes during that period. The regime was toppled very quickly. We probably didn't have enough forces on the ground to control the country the way we should have, when the looting broke out. But more importantly, firing the Iraqi military without telling them how we're going to provide that for them and their future, and also firing basically the bureaucracy of government. Certainly there were Ba'ath Party members, but down at level 4, they were largely Western educated, and they were the people that we needed to help us run a country we didn't sufficiently understand. And we paid for that for a number of years until during the surge in Iraq, when I was privileged to command it, we changed these policies and we actually pursued reconciliation and so forth, and then got it under control and indeed drove violence down by well over 85%. And the country was quite stable for 3.5 years until our final combat forces left and the prime minister pursued some ruinous sectarian actions. But when it comes to Iran, obviously there's an enormous difference. There's no force on the ground that can contribute to this. And I'm quite confident that President Trump does not want to do that. He has an aversion to that, I think, founded on what he watched take place in Iraq and also in Afghanistan. So the real question is, could there be someone who will emerge? The people are shouting the name.
So maybe the tactic from Venezuela, although it's a very, very different picture in Venezuela to Iran, but maybe the strategy is similar, that you create space at the top for someone to come through, and then you try and put in place an economic policy, sanctions relief, something that tempts that person to be more pragmatic towards the West.
And they, of course, have to swear off a nuclear program, a missile program.
All right, they're talking about oil now. I want to end trade disruptions.
83% of the LNG that passes through the strait heads to Asia, including China. Even Australia could be affected. Around 30% of its refined oil effectively passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Closing it could potentially remove more than 17 billion barrels of oil from the global market, driving up prices and straining energy supplies. Our correspondent Katrina Yu is in Beijing with more on China's concerns on how it will be affected.
Concerned about the disruption to the global energy market and indeed its own energy needs. Now, China doesn't release very exact figures as to how much oil it imports from Iran. We know that oil in general makes up about a fifth of China's entire energy needs. In this country, 70% of all Chinese oil is imported. Now, 40 to 50% of that comes from Gulf states such as Kuwait and Iraq, and pretty much all of that Gulf oil flowing to China flows through the Strait of Hormuz. So this, any possible closure, any possible disruption will be shocking for China, but indeed not completely surprising. It has been watching these tensions escalate over the past few weeks, no doubt making some contingency plans. Beijing has options. It could possibly import more oil from non-Middle Eastern countries such as Russia, Kazakhstan, even Brazil to make up any possible shortfall. And it may also be forced to release some of its own strategic reserves. In the short term, though, I think we can expect to see China continue to call for a halt to the attacks, for de-escalation, for a return to the negotiating table by all parties involved. I think we are also likely to see China call for any of that conflict to stay clear of the strait, to continue to allow any shipments of oil to flow through there, because of course this is going to affect the entire energy market, and China, as its economy is slowing, does not want to see this surge in oil prices that any closure of the strait will definitely cause.
Well, Nada Habibi is a professor of practice in the economics of the Middle East at Brandeis University. He says that the price of crude oil will go up, but gradually decrease depending on the length of the conflict.
I agree with that.
The crude oil market is a global market, so definitely the impact would be global in terms of prices. However, the spike, in my opinion, would be short term. We have seen the impact of previous conflicts, such as the 1991 conflict when the United States tried to liberate Kuwait.
there was a spike and then the prices returned to normal levels. Here we might see the same. Of course, depends on how long this conflict will last, but definitely in the short term, even starting next week, I believe there would be at least a 10 to 15% increase in the price of crude oil. It can escalate to about 100, but
no.
If the conflict or the intensity of the conflict is contained, that will gradually reduce, decline over time.
Much of the airspace over the Middle East is closed right now.
I think what's going to happen. I think what's going to happen with the oil market is that we're going to see a $4 spike, and then if we hear positive news where it's de-escalating and the IRGC is capitulating, then we're going to see it start to drift down. All right, back to, so it was trading at $67 a barrel or so. So it's going to, trade to just above $70 a barrel for WTI, and then it'll start to drift back down. All right. But if we get negative news and this is a prolonged conflict and the IRGC is not willing to capitulate, and either refineries are blown up, ports are blown up, the strait is closed down, tanker vessels being blown up, stuff like this, then you're looking at $80, $85, $90 a barrel. But the probability of that is low, but it could happen. This is the reason why you need a hedge. But right now, what I have is I have a hedge position in natural gas. You're going to also see this in natural gas, a spike in natural gas. Natural gas, I think it was trading at 2.8 on Friday. Let's see, what was natural gas trading at? Natural gas was trading at around 2.8. So natural gas could spike up to 3.25, maybe 3.4. And then drift back down. You'll probably see more of volatility in the natural gas market than you actually see in the oil market. But I have a hedge position where I'm longing and shorting, so it's a straddle position right now. Question is do you go heavier longing energy sector? Short term, yes. Long term, no. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Gladiator Barley. Gladiator Barley, this is a month's supply. You mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or just with milk, or mix it with, just regular food. But I mix it with hummus. You take it every day and you do some resistance training. It's dual purpose. What this will do is help to build muscle. It'll also help to bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals. And by doing that, you're slowing down the aging process. Because by soaking up free radicals, bringing down inflammation, you're boosting up your immune system. You're helping your vascular system. Because you're bringing down inflammation at the vascular level, you're reducing the free radicals, so you're reducing oxidized LDL, so you're reducing plaque formation. And this will help to detoxify your body. So if you want to slow down the aging process and build muscle, reduce atrophy, take Gladiator Barley. Now, you can take it separately or you can take it with Gladiator Barley, but Myotrol will also help to build muscle. Now, Gladiator Barley is a protein, all right, and has micronutrients in it, because this is an heirloom barley that you can't get at a regular store. So taking this will help you to have the building blocks to build muscle. Myotrol helps with the gene expression to build muscle. You can take them separately, but you get a synergistic effect when you take them together to build muscle. Now, Myotrol has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build muscle. Do some resistance training, take the Myotrol, and you will build muscle. In addition, You'll also bring down inflammation and you recover quicker on your workouts. So please go to my store and get them on film. And lastly, Renew is the structural nanosilver gel. You use it the same way as the other gel. This isn't a quick dispenser. You can put it on your skin daily to help with the health of your skin. You can use it on a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn to help heal it quicker. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your eyes, around your ears, lightly coat your nostrils. It'll stay active for 5.5 hours. You can't do that with Perel. Very high quality. Please go to my store and get the Renew, the structural nanosilver gel. All right, let's listen into live now.
It is mission accomplished. What are those discussions taking place right now?
Yeah, what's great about that photograph that you saw Marco Rubio there, it's a really signal to the world that it's not just military. We have our State Department operations, and those two need to work collectively together to make sure that what happens is going to be successful for the region. My concern is that the UN, look, we're going to see initial sort of support, not from the UN, but from our allies. But as we know historically, we've seen it time and time again, as the days or weeks, or if this goes into months, we're going to begin to see the UN and others turn against, I think, our efforts. And that's why it's so important that we remain unified. We talk about the successes and why the world will be better off without a violent Iran that has the capability with nuclear tactical weapons or beyond in the years to come. For the future of our country, the Middle East, and the world, this is historic. From the 1979 Iran history, we look at where we are today, we are living one of the most critical moments. And how we succeed or as a world fail will really tell us how we go forward as a country in securing the Middle East for the future.
And Paul, you're talking about how we're in a critical moment in time, a really seminal moment in time. Can you talk about the timing of Operation Epic Fury itself and why it was so essential to have that happen now?
Yeah, it really was. So these things don't happen, overnight. Certainly, we sent 2 carrier strike groups out there. You have our 5th Fleet in Bahrain, and just 124 miles from Iran. But what's critical to think about this from a military intelligence perspective is you have Mossad, which is really the critical intel arm, equivalent to our CIA in many levels, watching every single footstep of the Iranian regime. And so what we saw was a daylight opportunity where they were congregated. Trump has already given Iran the red line. We saw that they were not at all truly coming to the table, and this was an opportunity to take out significant military leadership, which we have done. And so if you look at 24 hours, yes, the devastating loss of 3 American service members, horrific. But the totality of where this mission is today, this really is the gold standard for watching Israel and the United States work collectively together. This would have been hard to imagine a few years ago where we are today. And this is going to be a long road. And we have to encourage the American people and the free world watching this, that this is not going to be a success overnight, that there's going to be challenges in the weeks and months and years ahead. This is really critical for who steps into the vacuum within Iran to lead that country.
And, you mentioned one part of this stunning operation, the fact that this was during daylight hours, which is rare, but also the fact that they knew where the supreme leader was hiding. Can you talk about just the effort that the intelligence community put forth to be able to have this a success?
Sure, and much of this intel will probably become declassified in the future. But when you look at this, you have human intelligence. So Mossad is just incredible. Again, it's basically, if you think of the CIA, it's their arm, it's their intelligence apparatus, which is all throughout the Middle East, and they've been extremely successful. So they have eyes and boots on the ground, as we said, throughout Iran. They've been watching every step, but we also have air assets, drones, satellite. We're tracking on cell phone data. But I will say that from a human intelligence, which just means it's human beings, it's the most dangerous part of the work of what we do. Mossad and likely CIA were on the ground working collectively together to track the footprints. And this was the critical opportunity. Now remember, this doesn't happen just by them seeing it. This then has to get elevated to Trump. This has got to get elevated to the President of the United States. So when you think about the timeliness of how this happened on the ground, observing the planning to the execution phase, it is textbook success.
And let's talk about also, you were mentioning the United Nations, and I wanted to circle back on that because the United Nations did hold a meeting yesterday. We were hearing Iran's representative pushing back, but we've also been hearing from leaders from around the world, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. We were hearing from the Australian Prime Minister in support of what the United States and Israel accomplished. When it comes to the United Nations, though, how does that factor in? And you were talking about perhaps some fatigue if this were to continue on for months, if not years, and then the pushback that we've already seen, particularly with Gaza. Can you talk about the role that the United Nations may or may not play in all of this?
I'll be honest, having been in the military, retired now 21 years, watching this politically, the UN is largely irrelevant. When you talk about Australia and UK, they're part of what we historically call the Five Eyes, our allied partners. We expect them to stand with us as well as they should. But the UN is going to continue to be a thorn in our side. When you look at who's on the security apparatus of the UN, when you look at the relevance that China and Russia has, look, they've been allied with Iran. And when you think about the drones that were created that are killing Ukrainian soldiers, many of those came from Iran, and they do have a seat at the table at the UN. So, my sort of words of wisdom, if you will, just look historically. The UN has historically been on the wrong side every single time when the US or the free world battles evil. So let's understand and accept the fact that there is going to be criticism from the UN, from folks that just don't like what we do. And that's okay. What we are doing is on the right side of history. It's on the right side of freedom.
And Paul, let's talk about, you were talking about the military. When it comes to how all of this plays out and the role of the United States, we've been hearing from President Trump, and you mentioned this, urging the people of Iran to rise up and take this opportunity, to create a new life, a new order for them in their country. But as we're talking about that transition and the concern with this power vacuum and what that might mean from the military standpoint, what could that look like? We haven't yet heard anything about boots on the ground or anything of that, but what might that look like?
Yeah, we won't be putting boots on the ground. I think just the American people recently coming out of Iraq and Afghanistan, we're not going to see that. But I also think that that's not something that we necessarily need in Iran. I think what we need to do is two things. We need to absolutely control the airspace, because if we do see an uprising against the government, we do not want the Quds Force or the Islamic Revolutionary Guard or others to target those civilians which are trying to overthrow their bad regime. So we need to complete control that. We can protect an uprising. That's what's really important. Number two is that, yes, there will be, and I believe, and this will probably come out later in unclassified reporting, we probably already know or have a good idea of the groups or the people or the leadership that we hope will fill this vacuum. And from a state, there's two parts going on as always. It's the military, but the State Department. State Department, CIA is going to have a huge role in this next part, which is looking at who's on the ground, who do we ally with, who we've already been working with through either back channels or open channels. Remember, we've been having discussions with the Trump administration, sending in Jared Kushner and others to have these back channel talks. So it would be fair to assume, although we don't know the intelligence, that the United States already has a good idea about who they'd like to see and who they will support. And we have the power to do that. And I think Israel has a strong seat at that table as well, because they don't just want to overthrow Iran and then see another anti-Israel government come in, which could be a threat to them. But remember,
we're going to go to France 24, but before we do, please take this stack. This is going to help with your cardiovascular health and boost up your immune system, but also your brain function. I'll explain. Turmeric will bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals. Lignans will bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals. It's an antioxidant. They'll also help with your endocrine system. And ashwagandha root will help to control your blood glucose levels and your cortisol levels. And by doing that, you're reducing inflammation, you're boosting up your immune system. By taking all these together, they act synergistically to boost up that immune system, help with your cardiovascular system by bringing down inflammation, soaking up free radicals, reducing oxidized LDL, so you're reducing plaque formation. And by bringing down inflammation at the brain level, you're helping to protect the health of your neurons. So this is a stack that's going to help to slow down the aging process, help with brain function, help with your cardiovascular function, and also your immune system. It's really important to take every day. Get the turmeric, get the lignans and the ashwagandha root, and radically slow down the aging process. All right, let's listen into France 24 here.
For results, that's not exactly the one that US was expecting. Now he's saying, I want to create regime change by sending warplanes and sending missiles, and for now, not sending ground troops into Iran. Well, how do you achieve that? I believe that the hope is that the regime, which has been weakened, especially by the 12-day war last June, which has been weakened because clearly it has been deeply infiltrated by the intelligence, both from Israel and from the US, i.e. the fact that its leadership was taken out at the very onset of the war. They believe that there's an opportunity for the regime to collapse. And this is why Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump are calling directly on the people of Iran to rise up and essentially kick out the regime. Well, a few weeks ago, there was a protest movement against the regime, and there was a brutal crackdown, which killed thousands, if not tens of thousands of people. Trump at the time encouraged them to do so, and he said aid was on the way, but aid did not arrive for those people who died. Now aid, quote unquote, is there. Was since then a huge military buildup from the US in the region. Now the US is intervening, but will the people of war rise up, or will the regime be able to retain control because it had prepared for the war, it had prepared for the succession of Ali Khamenei? The question is, as usual in those situations, will the security forces, the Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Basiji, the regular army, stand behind the regime, or decide that they've had enough, that it's too much suffering, and that they want to side with the people? This is probably wishful thinking in Washington and Jerusalem, but for the rest, it's very difficult to see how you reach that outcome without the security forces changing sides.
Thank you for that insight, Mark, on the US and Israeli positions. I'm curious to hear what you think about the Gulf countries which have been hit. How do you think they will react, if they are going to react, of course?
Well, for now, they've reacted, issuing statements and harsh words, saying the Iranian retaliation against us is unfair, it's undue. We tried our best at diplomacy. We tried to prevent this war. We've been very involved in trying to broker a diplomatic solution between the US and Iran. Let's just remember just a few days ago, Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, and his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, were sitting and negotiating with Iran. And this was just a couple of days ago. And the foreign minister of Oman went on a major U.S. network to say a deal was within reach. And so the Gulf countries are saying, how can you hurt us? How can you send drones and missiles, not only at the American bases in our countries, which is the justification given by Iran's regime, but also hitting civilian infrastructure and killing civilians? In doing so, this is not fair. So the question is, will those countries allow the US and even Israel to use the infrastructure in those countries very close to Iran to strike Iran? Will they eventually decide that they've had enough and that they will strike Iran directly? This could obviously be a game changer. The last news that came out of the region is that Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, had just spoken with the foreign minister of Iran and reportedly told him that Iran was ready for any kind of de-escalation. The question is is it still possible at this juncture? It seems that the military offensive is still in full swing, but Iran is maybe trying to find a way out before there is indeed more chaos and more death.
Comprehensive, as always. Thank you very much, Mark Parham, France 24's international editor. Now, I'd like to focus some more on the situation in Israel, and for that we can speak to.
I want to go to Al Jazeera here.
In these kinds of scenarios, I think they have had many policies in the past that turned out to be or lead to exact opposite of what the United States wanted. So that can be a scenario. But with regards to the internal politics of the country, firstly, I think the number that Mohammed gave is not true. I think the opposition said so, that 32,000 were killed. And then they themselves said that we used it to propagate or promote demonstrations against the system afterwards. The government published the names of 3,117 people killed, including security forces. The country, the society is polarized, that's for sure. There are those who are against the system and demonstrated for their basic, the betterment of their economic situation. And there are those who went even further to chant against the system. But there is another side of to the story, that is the solid public base of the system that we see now in the streets in Tehran and elsewhere around the country. That public base, rarely spoken in Western mainstream media, is really back in the system, and I think they will back whoever is elected by of experts moving forward as the next supreme leader.
Hassan Ahmadian and Mohammed Saloom, gentlemen, thank you both very much. Now I'm going to take you to Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Iran earlier launched an attack on the central Israeli city of Beit Shemesh. At least 9 people are reported to have been killed. Nora, tell us more about that attack.
Well, Adrian, that attack really has taken its toll on the Israeli public. They've seen pictures of devastation in Beit Shemesh. 9 people confirmed dead, more than 20 injured, and rescue workers still looking under the rubble, fearing that the number of the death toll might rise. This is the deadliest toll that we've seen since Israel launched its strikes on Iran. But it is a reminder that Iran has the capacity to strike at the heart of Israeli cities and towns and to really cause considerable damage. We saw that in June of 2025 in that 12-day confrontation that Israel initiated. And now we heard from the Israeli Prime Minister shortly after that attack, shortly after the announcement of those of the high toll, and he was trying to assure the public that Israel was striking hard, that it would escalate its attacks on Tehran, that it would protect Israelis from what he described as an existential threat against Israel. But he also admitted that difficult days are ahead, which is a slightly different tone from the one he had earlier on when he was talking about assassinating Khamenei, assassinating up to 40 commanders in Iran, and really trying to tell the Israeli public that overthrowing the government in Tehran was within reach, which is something that is now being disputed openly by former military leaders in Israel.
Many thanks. Nurodeh reporting live from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Dan Perry is an Israeli political analyst and the former chief editor of the Associated Press in Europe, the Middle East and Africa. He says Israel is still largely in control of its skies, even though some Iranian missiles have penetrated its defense system.
System is not invulnerable, it's not impregnable, but it is very, very effective. They knew all along that some missiles would get through, and it really is just a matter of luck. How much damage they cause. I suppose that the air defenses are clustered most intensively around strategic targets, which tragically is not the small town of Beit Shemesh in central Israel. So we see what happened there. Obviously, that event, from an Israeli perspective, is tragic, but it doesn't change the bigger picture, which is that the skies over Israel have been largely protected. I think the percentage of missiles that have been successfully intercepted is well into the high 90%. Whereas Israel succeeded in controlling the skies over its target cities in Iran. These two facts remain, and they are, I believe, the essence of the narrative from an Israeli perspective.
Breaking news being attributed to the Atlantic magazine, quoting President Trump. He says that he's spoken to Iran's new leaders. They want to talk, and he's agreed to talk. We'll have more on that as and when we get it here on Al Jazeera. In fact, we'll be speaking to our chief US correspondent within the next 10 minutes or so. Iran continues to strike US assets across the Gulf, targeting several military bases. Smoke was seen in the industrial area in Qatar's capital, Doha. Strikes also hit Bahrain, Jordan, Oman, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. Attacks have been reported on airports, residential buildings, and hotels. Shelter-in-place alerts have been issued to citizens across the region. Well, plumes of smoke were seen coming from one of Dubai's main commercial ports. Bloomberg has reported that logistics company DP World has suspended its operations at Jebel Ali port. Two Iranian drones targeting Al Salam military base in Abu Dhabi were dealt with, according to the Defense Ministry. The UAE says that at least 3 people have been killed and that it's intercepted more than 500 missiles and drones. Oman's Maritime Security Center says an oil tanker has been attacked in the Strait of Hormuz. Several crew members are reported to have been injured. Separately, north of Muscat, a vessel was struck with an unknown projectile. Earlier, 2 drones hit Iran's commercial port of Duqm. Hundreds of ships have dropped anchor in the region. Qatar's foreign ministry has condemned the attack on Oman, saying in a statement, the state of Qatar expresses its strong condemnation of the Iranian attacks that targeted the commercial port in the Sicily Sultanate of Oman and an oil tanker off its coast, considering them a violation of the Sultanate's sovereignty, an unacceptable escalation and a cowardly targeting of a country playing an active role in mediation efforts. Well, the head of Iran's Supreme National Security Council has sought to reassure Gulf states about Iranian strikes against them. Ali Larijani insists the attacks are not against them, but against the US. In a post on the social media platform X, he said, "We are not intending to attack you. When the bases in your country are used against us, we will target those bases. These bases are not part of those countries. They are American land." It's being described as one of the most severe disruptions to global aviation in years. Regional uncertainty and continuing strikes across the Middle East have impacted thousands of flights and stranded tens of thousands of passengers. Airports in Dubai, Doha, and Abu Dhabi have closed, severing critical hubs between Africa, Asia, and Europe. Al Jazeera's Perry Wilson reports.
Blasts have replaced the rush of jet engines above Dubai. Streaks in the sky from missiles instead of the contrails from thousands of flights locals are used to seeing. Dubai is home to the world's busiest airport by international traffic, handling millions of passengers a month. But the closure of its airspace has stranded many.
I think the one thing that I'm worried about is my flight, because I'm supposed to fly back to my home country in 2 days.
It's being felt across the Gulf. Iranian strikes damaged Kuwait's airport on Saturday. And in Doha, the airspace has closed for another of the world's busiest airports. There are delays which are now being felt worldwide. In Thailand, flights through the Middle East have been mostly cancelled, affecting hundreds. And it's the same in India.
We came here from Uttar Pradesh and for our flight scheduled to Dubai. Our flight was cancelled, so we don't know what to do. We are helpless. There are 15 of us.
In Paris, many more can't reach their destination.
Unfortunately, our whole trip from our school canceled it, so we're no longer going to Dubai.
Yeah, there's no more Dubai trip in the future for us, unfortunately. But I don't think there are going to be many Dubai trips happening very soon.
Airlines are citing imminent safety concerns for the cancellations, asking would-be passengers to keep across the latest updates for information. And with the next strikes difficult to predict, passengers are left wondering when things may return to normal.
When we woke up, we found out that the airports have been hit. So it's the unknown. So my daughter's meant to be flying back today, so we're going to find out if the airport's open. So that's the unknown. That's the nervousness what we're concerned about.
It's that unknown which hangs over the region, a region that's dependent on travel for its tourism and its workforce. And if the conflict in Iran continues, the aviation industry is likely to experience even more disruptions, impacting millions more. Kerry Wilton, Al Jazeera, Doha.
Shipping giant Maersk is pausing sailings through the Bab el-Mandeb Straits and the Suez Canal, as well as in addition to the Strait of Hormuz. That's a crucial sea passage for oil and gas shipments. Shipments through the Strait of Hormuz are already suspended. At its narrowest point, the strait is about 33 kilometers wide, but its shipping lanes are even narrower. Iran controls the north side of the strait, while Oman controls the south. An estimated 20% of the world's oil is transported through the waterway. China takes the vast majority of Iran's crude exports. Around 45% of its total crude imports transit the Strait of Hormuz. Qatar also depends heavily on the strait to export its liquefied natural gas. 83% of the LNG that passes through the strait heads to Asia, including China. Even Australia could be affected. Around 30% of its refined oil effectively passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Closing it could potentially remove more than $17 billion. Let me say that again. More than 17 billion barrels of oil from the global market, driving up prices and straining energy supplies. Well, Oman's foreign minister has urged a ceasefire in a phone call with Iran's foreign minister. The Iran Foreign Ministry says that Abbas Araghchi said Iran was calling for peace and voiced the openness of the Iranian side to any serious efforts that contribute to the stopping of the escalation and returning to stability. You're watching our continuing coverage of the joint Israeli and US attacks on Iran. The US Military Central Command says 3 service members have been killed and 5 are seriously wounded, adding that several others sustained minor fractal injuries and concussion and are in the process of being returned to duty. The Iranian Ministry of Education says the number of female students killed in a joint Israeli-American attack has risen to 153. The attack happened on Saturday in the southern city of Minan. Israel has continued its strikes for a second day, saying it's targeting ballistic missile and aerial defense systems. Iran has retaliated by targeting the central city of Beit Shemesh in Israel, killing at least 9 people. At least 57 others have been injured, and emergency teams are at the scene. Israel says there's no contact yet with 11 people who are missing. Israel's military says that it's investigating why its air defense system failed to intercept the missiles. Let's go live down to Washington. Our chief US correspondent, Alan Fisher, is once again. Alan, that breaking news we mentioned a few moments ago, Trump's interview with The Atlantic magazine, saying that he's been in touch with the new leadership in Iran and that they're willing to talk.
He said that they were too cute, that they wanted a deal, but in the talks before the war was launched, that they were just too cute. He also added that he doesn't know who'll be on the other end of the phone because they don't know who is left in the leadership. What is interesting is he said that they intend to speak within the next couple of days. So that would give you the idea that perhaps this war may not be a long-term thing. But Donald Trump has said in a series of media interviews that he gave by phone on Saturday that the war will last as long as it needs to last, and he will make the call about when it needs to end. That may be accelerated by the fact that the United States is suffering fatalities, with 3 service personnel being killed in an attack at some point on Sunday, 5 others injured. And of course, Donald Trump was the man who said that neocons, people that he was fighting against in the Republican Party, were people that wanted to start wars and then send your children, as he said, to fight their wars. The fact that now 3 bodies will be coming back to the United States may focus his attention on the possibility of negotiating some sort of deal with the Iranians.
What more do we know about that incident, Alan, that CENTCOM posted about on X, that 3 service members have been killed? And I mean, what does that mean for the US president politically?
Well, I don't think we're going to get many more details for a number of reasons. One, if they identify where it happened, that gives the Iranians intelligence that they could perhaps use and inflict more casualties. We won't get the names for at least 24 hours. The families still have to be informed. And also that would give us an idea of where the service members were based and perhaps, again, provide evidence, information, intelligence to Iran. We know that 5 service personnel were also injured, some with shrapnel wounds, so that immediately led someone I was speaking to suggest that this was either some sort of missile or drone strike that was fairly impactful. And so we won't get a lot more information. Donald Trump will be watching very carefully, because when he made his announcement just after the war was launched, he said that there will be casualties. He was preparing the United States for that. But he really wanted this to be an operation like we saw in Iran last summer in August, Midnight Hammer, where there were no personnel injured, or in Venezuela, where there were very few injuries. He wanted that sort of clean operation. And we are told that a number of senior military officials warned him this wasn't that sort of scenario, that there was the possibility there would be consequences to this action. And he's now got to try and justify that, not just to the nation, but also to his MAGA base, because he campaigned on being the no foreign wars president, the man who wasn't going to take the United States into war, that wasn't going to spend money on foreign wars, stupid foreign wars as he described them. That money was going to be spent making America great again. It was going to be spent within this country. He now has got to explain to the Americans and that base why there are casualties, how long this is going to take place, how long this is going to carry on for, and what the next steps in the operation are.
Our chief US correspondent, Alan Fisher, reporting live from Washington. Alan, many thanks. European Union leaders are gathering for an emergency meeting in Brussels to discuss the conflict between Iran, the US, and Israel. The bloc's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, has described Iran's attacks on its neighbors as indiscriminate and warned that they could drag the region into a wider war. Let's go live now to Brussels. Al Jazeera's Osama bin Javed is with us. What are we expecting from this meeting, Osama?
Well, this is an extraordinary meeting which is currently underway with the 27-member bloc's foreign ministers in attendance. This is a virtual meeting where many are joining via video link, but it just goes to show that Europe is taking this very seriously because of a number of issues that Europe has to deal with.
I'm going to go to live now.
Because of its relationship with the
by U.S. allies. When we take a look at this region of the world in terms of the next person to assume power, how do the other countries surrounding Iran factor in, if at all?
Well, having the other countries around Iran and in the Middle East is important for the U.S. and for Israel because it shows broader support within the region, and it will also be helpful to whatever comes next in Iran. But remember, many of the countries that are participating, in fact, all of them, are historically enemies of Iran. These are Sunni-dominated countries with monarchies that are and Sunni majorities or Sunnis in the lead. So there have been tensions for many years between those countries and Iran. But I don't want to minimize the importance of having Gulf countries. And I would also say it's really historic that now some Gulf countries like UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait are fighting on the same side as Israel, perhaps even cooperating, doing intelligence sharing with Israel. So that's a very important development too. I would also just mention that Iraq is in a bit of a different place because Iraq is a Shia-led country with a majority Shia population. There are close ties, especially between southern Iraq and Iran. So Iraq is sort of on the sidelines. There have been protests in Iraq. There have been protests at the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. So it will also be interesting to watch what Iraq does.
Yeah, and I also, David, I wanted to share this with our viewers right here. These are some photos taken from when Operation Epic Fury took place. We see President Trump, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and others at the Mar-a-Lago estate. Meanwhile, Vice President J.D. Vance and his team were in the Situation Room in Washington, D.C. But as we take a look at this, we see Susie Wiles there. We see Tulsi Gabbard. We see Scott Bessent, Secretary Scott Bessent. When we take a look at who is in the room in each of these locations, can you talk about the significance of maybe Secretary Marco Rubio next to President Trump? And we see Tulsi Gabbard, we see Secretary Bessent. What do the people in the room indicate, if anything, to you?
Well, these are the key advisors for President Trump. I think also there was the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, Dan Kane, and obviously they gathered in Palm Beach because that's where the president was. They set up this impromptu situation room to order the attack from there. Likely President Trump made this decision on his own in consultation with these advisors that we see around him. That's Susie Wiles next to him as well, his chief of staff. Marco Rubio is going to be very important going forward. The president relies on Marco Rubio not just as his Secretary of State, but also as his national security advisor. So he has the dual hats, and he'll likely be involved, especially when military operations end in Iran, in what the plan is for the U.S. in doing diplomacy with Iran, perhaps with reconstruction of Iran if there actually is regime change.
And David, I also wanted to share this new update right here saying that Trump says new Iranian leaders want to talk, and he has agreed to talk. That's according to an Atlantic magazine interview. When you hear that update right there, what does that indicate, if anything, to you?
Well, that's a little surprising. It seems to show weakness by Iran, that whoever those leaders are, you would think that they would be defiant. But this also kind of follows the playbook of Venezuela, where we took out Maduro, brought him back here to the U.S., and then quickly started having some discussions with his successors, including Delcy Rodriguez, who was his vice president, is now acting president. And so maybe that's the goal, to kind of follow that game plan. I'm just not sure that's going to work because the regime, is very committed to having a theocracy controlled by the mullahs, a very tight control over the population, and not open to democracy, not open to Western values, not open to human rights. So I'm not sure how we get from here to there.
And David, we also have a new update from Fox News correspondent and anchor Jackie Heinrich saying that I spoke with President Trump briefly this morning before the announcement about U.S. casualties. So he did not comment on that, but some notes. He says the U.S. knows how many targets are left, and regarding progress towards Iranian people taking control of their destiny, quote, it's moving along rapidly. This has been this way for 47 years. He said, quote, it's moving along rapidly. Nobody can believe the success we're having. 48 leaders are gone in one shot, and it's moving along rapidly. On concern about oil prices, impacts of the Strait of Hormuz, the president said, quote, I'm not concerned about anything, Jackie. I just do what's right. At the end, it works out. He cited good outcomes from Venezuela, operations, attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities with B-2 bombers. He also said, quote, if we didn't do that, they would have had a nuclear weapon within 2 weeks, and then all of this would not have been possible. So President Trump stating that he knows how many targets are left. So a little bit more indication in terms of that. But as we're taking a look at this from the conversation that Fox News host Jackie Heinrich had with the president, does anything from this stand out to you?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. Let's take his comment that they know how many targets are left. That kind of suggests that there's some end point here, that there's kind of a finite strategy, and that once they complete hitting each of the targets, they may back off and cease hostilities towards Iran. But again, I'm not sure that's going to result in regime change. The president seems very positive and optimistic about regime change there, and that would be great for the people of Iran. They deserve to have regime change. But when he talks about they're making progress, what we're hearing from on the ground in Iran doesn't suggest the type of progress yet. Maybe it will happen, but it's going to take people in the streets taking back government buildings, kind of doing what happened in 1979 when there was the last revolution that put this regime in place. They're going to have to retake the government buildings. There's going to have to be defections by the Iranian military, maybe even by the IRGC. Without that, I think the Iranian regime is going to maintain its grip over Iran unless and until there's an armed opposition or there's a foreign intervention with boots on the ground.
This operation is extremely complex and likely was months in the making, and from the quote that Jackie Heinrich has here from President Trump saying, quote, if we didn't do that, they would have had a nuclear weapon within 2 weeks, and then all of this would not have been possible. Can you talk a little bit more about the critical timing and why now it was so important to have this mission?
Well, the administration hasn't disclosed why they felt all of a sudden Iran might be able to get nuclear weapons or might be close to getting nuclear weapons. Again, they've always been close. They have enriched uranium. They have the technology. So they've been close for years, but it's not clear whether something happened in the last few weeks, the last few months to suggest they were even closer, that they were going to go over the threshold. I think it's more likely that they just remained as close as they were before, which is too close for comfort. And the president is right that if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, everything changes, because then they can hold the world hostage by threatening to use that nuclear weapon if they are attacked. So it's important we do this before they get nuclear weapons if this is necessary. And this should always be a last resort, using military violence like this, but it's not clear what caused the president and Israel to think this was the time. We do know that there was this meeting that the Supreme Leader Khamenei was going to yesterday with other key leaders of Iran, and it seems like the strikes started because they saw that as an enormous opportunity to take out the leadership of the regime, and that, I think, dictated why they did it at that time yesterday.
As we continue to keep a very close eye and monitor all of these developments, David, is there a particular aspect of all of this that you are keeping a very close eye on, or anything that jumps out to you?
I think what we should be keeping an eye on is what are the people in Iran doing? What's happening not just in Tehran, but outside Iran, especially among the minority groups. And Iran has significant minorities, the Azeris, the Baluchis, and the Kurds. Are they rising up against the regime? What's happening with the rank and file military soldiers in Iran? Are they taking off their uniforms, laying down arms? Are they joining the protesters? These are the things that need to happen to have regime change across the country. We've seen this happen in other countries where there is regime change, but so far we don't have enough reporting from the ground to suggest that ball is rolling right now.
And David, can you give us a little bit more understanding in terms of the population in Iran? You're talking about all these different groups and these factions. Is it relatively cohesive? Is it a very divided country? When we take a look at, is it realistic for the people of Iran to rise up and overthrow this regime? Can you talk about what has to happen in order for that to come to fruition?
Well, Iran is a very interesting place culturally. Iranians are very proud of their heritage. They're very nationalistic, but the large majority of Iranians do not support this regime. They feel like they've been betrayed by this regime, that their lives are much worse under this regime. So they recognize the regime as a pariah. So there's, generally across the country, there's opposition to the regime. But Iran is a police state, and they are very effective at taking dissidents, detaining them, torturing them, creating a culture of fear. And so that is what may keep people off the streets, especially right now, where the regime might retaliate, might use even greater amounts of violence to try to keep control of the country. But there is discontent among these minority populations that I talked about, the Kurds, the Baluch, the Azeris, and they're going to have to take leadership in terms of rising up against the regime if they are going to ultimately force a regime change.
All right, David Tafuri, as always, we appreciate joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thank you.
And President Trump telling Fox News that, quote, we know how many targets are left. We haven't yet heard from him. However, we are expecting him to return to Washington, D.C. this evening. And he speaks with reporters on Air Force One. Of course, we'll bring you any remarks that the president will have. We're going to just step away for a brief moment. Much more coverage to come. Stay with us.
Before we go to BBC, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great supplements that I offer. But before we talk about two supplements that are dual purpose, I have a live show tonight with John Hogue. We're going to be talking about what's going on in Iran. Unfortunately, we weren't able to record throughout February, but we will do a emergency recording and live show tonight at 10 p.m. New York time, so Eastern Standard Time. So please make sure that you pay attention to that. It will be broadcasted live on YouTube, and also we will have a call-in on X Spaces for anyone that wants to ask questions to John Hogue. So just put that in your calendar if you would like to watch it. So please go to my store. Help support the work that I do by getting the digestive enzyme complex. The digestive enzyme complex will help to reduce the load on your pancreas so you can digest carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. When you turn age 40, your pancreas doesn't produce the same quantity of enzymes and the quality of enzymes that you need to digest your food. No matter how healthy you are, your pancreas ages. So it's important to keep the health of your pancreas. Why? Because you don't want to turn into Steve Jobs, right? So the best way to do this is to eat properly, exercise, but also to take the right supplementation. So on my store, I have something called the digestive enzyme complex that will help to break up those proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids. So it reduces the load on your pancreas and it allows you to digest your food and so you can absorb your nutrients properly. If you're an athlete, by taking digestive enzyme complex for your pre or post workout fuel source, it will help you to absorb your nutrients. And vitamin D3. A lot of people know that vitamin D3 is super important, especially during the cold season. But vitamin D3 is a dual purpose vitamin, right? Vitamin D3 will help you to absorb calcium. You get a higher efficacy with vitamin D3 when you also take magnesium. Now, vitamin D3 will also help with gene expression because it's a gene expression cofactor. So it's really important to take every day. Now, I recommend taking 10,000 IUs daily, 5,000 in the morning, 5,000 in the evening. Now, vitamin D3 at higher doses with a certain type of protocol, you can also reverse osteoarthritis, especially if it's from sports. Because what it will do is that you can actually build and remodel the bone matrix. So taking vitamin D3, especially when you couple it with K2, MK7, by taking K2 and taking D3 and taking in calcium and doing some resistance training, you're going to actually build denser bone. And vitamin D3 can help with the vascular system. So it's a dual purpose. It's really important to take. Most people are depleted or don't have enough concentrations of D3 in their bloodstream, so it's important to take every day. Okay, with that, let's go to BBC. Again, my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All the links are in the description of every video.
What the aim is and to what extent the US is going to continue to be engaged, Christian, that will, of course, help Europeans decide what their response is.
Suni's going to stay with us for all the reaction from Washington through the afternoon. Suni, thank you for the moment. How does the US military intervention compare with others of recent times, such as Iraq, Afghanistan, Venezuela? I've been speaking to the former US general and former CIA director, David Petraeus.
This is of strategic significance, even though we do not know what will follow. And of course, there is an interim council that has taken over, although we've heard nothing from them. I'm confident that they're not using cell phones because of electronic signature and so forth. And so we'll have to see what ultimately results from this. The Assembly of Experts, of course, will convene and determine who the next supreme leader is. Meanwhile, of course, numerous other security force leaders have been taken out, and presumably their deputies are in the process of taking over their responsibilities as well.
We'll talk about that in a second because it's a really important part of the conversation. But just in terms of the work that's been done over decades by successive CIA directors to get this intelligence on the ground, and you were part of this, is this a success of many years of investing in that intelligence?
Very much so. And again, very much joint with Mossad, with other services too, of course, including the BBC, the British MI6 and others. Everyone has worked together on these over the years. The specific intelligence this time, I suspect, came from a combination of Mossad and CIA, and perhaps some of the signals intelligence elements that support them as well. And really, the overall campaign is a result of decades of work. In fact, when I was the Central Command commander back in 2009, we developed the plan to destroy the Iran nuclear program, many features of which are part of this campaign, although obviously the 12-day air campaign used some as well. So there's been decades of work focusing on specific targets on the missile program, on the other retaliatory means that Iran has, and indeed on the security force leaders, headquarters, and other elements.
And in terms of the succession, the picture that you built on the ground through that human intelligence, does that suggest that there are people in the regime that would be more pragmatic, perhaps appeal more to Western governments than those who are currently in direct line to the succession?
I think there probably are. The question is, will one of those people be chosen, or will one of those break off and try to have the disaffected elements of the security services and population rally to him? That is the big question right now. One generally thinks that the Assembly and the Academy of Experts will select someone who is another hardline clerical ideologue. But again, certainly within the regime, there are individuals that are much more pragmatic. You know, Karim Sadikour, one of the great Iranian analysts here in the United States, noted that it used to be that about 80% of the regime security forces and regime leaders were hardliners and 20% were what were called charlatans. In other words, they're just along for the ride to get what they can out of the security services domination of certain economic sectors. He says now it's about 20% are hardliners, 80% are, again, a bit more pragmatic, the charlatans. You know, could one of those step up somehow? Although I'm not sure that will be the selection by the process that will come together, the conclave, if you will, that selects a supreme leader, noting that this has only happened once before and as many decades ago. But we can certainly hope, but I'm not sure that that particular outcome is yet the base case.
You were the senior commander in Iraq in 2007. It took 3 weeks to get rid of Saddam Hussein, but it took decades to put Iraq back on an even keel. And that was largely because there were thousands of Republican Guard soldiers, police, institutions built around Saddam Hussein who were not given a job and who, of course, formed their own militias to take on American forces. Now, you surged in, I think, around 30,000 US troops to try and get a grip of that. You've a very good idea of how difficult it is getting rid of a regime. Can it be done in Iran without a ground force there to do it?
Well, very much depend on who it is that might emerge, again, around whom the population, which is so outraged by the leadership driving the economic Iran into a ditch when it should be one of the energy superpowers of the world with the second largest natural gas reserves and the third largest crude oil.
I want to pivot over to France 24 because I think they're talking about the anti-war protests that are taking place here, and I think this is an important feature of what's going on worldwide.
We've seen Donald Trump say this numerous times about Iran. There have been talks in the past, but obviously the situation has changed. We're not even 48 hours into this new war. We know that Donald Trump is very fond to say, I'm seeking peace through strength. Well, obviously he believes he has shown strength by taking out the leadership of Iran. This also could imply that there have been some talks, secretive talks with maybe some people within the regime. So we'll have to see whether this is just bluster by the American president, or if this could lead to some de-escalation. The Iranian foreign minister also reportedly told his Omani counterpart that Iran is ready for de-escalation. Those are just words. In the meantime, the war is ongoing, but at least the US president is saying, Iran wants to talk, I want to talk, let's see if they deliver.
Mark, thank you so much for that update. France 24's international editor there for us, Mark Perelman. I'm afraid that's all we have time for this edition. You've been following the latest unfolding news in Iran and across the globe here on France 24. Stay tuned for more in this special edition.
They didn't cover the protests, unfortunately, but I'm going to pivot over to Cash Jordan and his take on the whole fiasco that's taking place in the Middle East. But before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and I do have a new product that's been available for about 2 months now. It's called Super Strong Relief. And what this is it's a topical where you rub it on areas of soreness like a pulled muscle or arthritis, even a headache. You can put it on. You can rub it on your temples topically or your neck muscles to reduce the tension headache. But this relief from pain, like arthritis, it's within like 30 seconds, 60 seconds. It's pretty powerful stuff. So get the Super Strong Relief. It's a topical. It's very high quality. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And I also have heirloom barley that is dual purpose. Now this heirloom barley, it's a powder. You mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with milk. I mix it with hummus. But you take it every day, and what this will do is detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. When you do this every day, what's going to happen is your immune system is going to improve, your cardiovascular system is going to improve, even brain function. Why? You're detoxifying your body, you're bringing down inflammation, and you're soaking up those free radicals. So at the vascular level, when you're bringing down inflammation, you're reducing micro tears in your intima of your blood vessels. By soaking up free radicals, you're reducing oxidized LDL. Oxidized LDL is the first step to building plaque while you're reducing plaque formation at the vascular level. When you're detoxifying your body, it's just better off for all of your organ systems, including your brain. And by bringing down inflammation at the cerebral level, what's going to happen is that you're protecting the myelin sheath of your neuron. So you're protecting your neural connections. So you will be able to have better conductivity between your neurons. So it's really important to take this every day. And like I said, it's dual purpose. It's going to help to boost up your immune system, help with your cardiovascular system, and help with your brain function. And it's really easy to take. It's just a scoop of powder, and you mix it with soft food or a smoothie or even with filtered water, and it does wonders, right? Okay, with that, let's listen into Cash Jordan and his take on the attack on Iran.
On what appear to be a military conflict. Today, Iran and Russia conducted joint naval drills in the Gulf of Oman.
So, as talks with Iran's dictatorship go absolutely nowhere, those guys are teaming up with Russia to send A message to the United States that this isolated regime is not alone, even as they back themselves into a corner with their refusal to step down, perpetuating protests inside their country and around the world from those who want change, as well as triggering an unprecedented U.S. military buildup, which could soon have to face off with the Russians.
With the drums of war beating louder, in the Strait of Hormuz, Iran and Russia held live-fire naval exercises, which included vessel raids and ship seizures.
Why do they need an intercontinental ballistic missile? That's a missile that goes far. The reason is so they have the ability to attack the United States. So why are they spending billions of dollars to create that missile? It isn't for Israel and it isn't for Europe. It's for us.
Well, Iran, as usual, keeps thinking they can get away with it, that America isn't watching. And this posturing for war, I think, is a major mistake on behalf of the Iranians. History shows it only ends badly for them.
The U.S. is engaged in the largest military buildup in the Middle East since the eve of the Iraq War. F-15 fighter jets, stealth F-35s, KC-135 refueling tankers, and a squadron of F-22 Raptors.
As Trump said, 15 days, we're going to get a deal one way or another. And Trump has been very careful to say there's one way that's got consequence that they don't want. He was very clear about that.
Hello?
Hi there. This is Regional Power Utility. We're calling you about an outstanding balance.
I thought I paid that.
Scheduled for being shut off unless it's resolved today.
So apparently, China was also involved in these recent military drills with Iran and Russia. And what nobody's talking about is the gathering of these three regimes in one place. It's not an accident whatsoever, as Iran is the last puppet state of the anti-Western axis, propped up by China and Russia, which used to include Venezuela and failing communist Cuba, an alliance the Russians find even more important the longer their war of aggression in Ukraine takes place. Ditto China, who is no friend to anyone on the world stage unless it helps them project power and influence. And together, this anti-Western axis, these guys help each other avoid those pesky U.S. sanctions we've all been hearing about for decades and assumed were completely useless. But now suddenly work, as the Trump administration has made it clear if you sail a tanker full of sanctioned oil anywhere in the world, it's going to get captured and rerouted to the U.S. Strategic Reserve. A massive slap in the face to Russia, who routes its sanctioned resources through Iran to the rest of the world, which reveals that if Iran's regime can somehow stick around, the funding mechanisms for continued despotic mayhem remain alive and a real threat. But that brings us to the real reason we're getting closer and closer and closer to something big happening in the Middle East. You've got two U.S. carrier battle groups surrounding our adversaries who are all on life support. The Russians have been on life support since they invaded Ukraine. Iran is on life support every single day as its people rise up and protest for their freedom. And without a strong Russia and Iran, China, they don't have a friend left on the planet. But Trump's got another ace up his sleeve, because this armada, its presence alone.
Breaking news, 100,000 reservists in IDF are called in.
As America's adversaries completely off balance, even without firing a shot. And they're going crazy, expending what little resources they have to perform military drills that won't stop stealth aircraft they don't see until God shows them the instant replay. And as you're about to see, U.S. carriers and ships surrounding Iran, that is nightmare news for Russia, who needs this regime to hang on as long as possible.
Alert Russia and Iran carrying out more joint military exercises with the Islamic Republic moving military assets while the U.S. ramps up its presence. One expert claims Iran is repositioning strike zones under the cover of these joint drills with Russia. The Russia drills would cover for the Iranian forces to move their drones into the strike position. They've gone under the veil of doing the military exercises, which happen to be along the coastline. And this is an escalation. So
the presence of Russian forces along the Iranian coastline, it does a couple of things. Yes, it's a team up to try and show America, hey, we're here, we're not to be trifled with. But there's an allegation that these drills are giving the Iranians cover. so that they can set things up, set up defenses, get things in line to take some sort of preemptive action. And remember, Russia has very few friends left in the world, and without Iran and its strategic oil industry, evading U.S. sanctions to fund wars and invasions of countries like Ukraine goes out the window. On top of that, Russia is currently developing Iranian oil fields right now. And Russia supplies badly needed natural gas to Iran so that this regime can prop up its failing economy. On top of that, the way Russia and China look at this is the more countries out there hostile to the U.S. who don't trade with the U.S. dollar, the better it is for them. But this sleight of hand, moving around military assets under the cover of some sort of drill, well, one expert thinks this may have just sealed Iran's fate.
Well, Iran, as usual, keeps thinking they can get away with it, that America isn't watching. And this posturing for war, I think, is a major mistake on behalf of the Iranians. History shows it only ends badly for them. Between them and the Israelis, we have a lot of intelligence information on them. They like to hide their drone operations under this guise of exercises, but yet we're almost, flying ours in broad daylight. I think that's the difference between a regime pretending to project strength and a real military that actually has it. What we're seeing right now, it's not just this routine military maneuvering, it's a chess match in the air. Iran's repositioning strike drones under the cover of these drills with Russia, and that tells me two things immediately. First, they still don't want transparency, and second, they're testing this battle positioning under plausible deniability. And by the way, let's not forget that this is exactly what Russia did before they went to a war in Ukraine.
Very interesting. So we've got the Russians and the Iranians, and they're doing the same thing that the Russians did before they launched an invasion. That's not a good look, especially when you've got your negotiators out there who are trying to tell the entire world that, hey, we're a peaceful nation. We want to just have a civilian nuclear program and a few defensive ballistic missiles, which don't actually exist. Those are offensive weapons only. They go very far. But here they are in secret, doing things under the table. How does that make them look like a good negotiator? How does that make them look like they can be trusted if they're going to agree to something like a nuclear deal and they're moving their military assets around in secret, hiding things as they make that deal? It makes it look like whatever agreement they come up with and put forward to the United States is totally worthless, and everyone is watching this, seeing it happen.
With 14 ships, hundreds of aircraft, and thousands of troops, it's the largest US buildup in the region since the Iraq War deployment, which was
And the
much
reasons
larger.
for it are obvious.
By all accounts, Iran is preparing for the worst. This satellite imagery shows tunnel entrances at the Esfahan nuclear complex completely covered in soil to protect it. Likewise, these pictures show a new military facility built to replace the one destroyed by Israeli strikes in 2024, also covered in soil.
Well,
meanwhile, the window for diplomacy.
Soil doesn't really protect from weapons. It does protect from prying eyes. It does protect from inspectors. And it does stop people from going into those places to check them out and make sure that they truly are peaceful. But these sites were blown up by munitions that went deep underground and exploded their nuclear plants and their nuclear facilities just a couple of years ago. So what are they up to here? Could it possibly be that the actions taken at their nuclear facilities, which were destroyed a year ago and now look like they're being revitalized, are being done in tandem with secret drone-related military buildups along their coastline? Perhaps. And if you're the Trump administration, you're going to get out there, you're going to tell the world that, hey, we want to make a deal with Iran. We want to do it. But Iran is basically proving that any deal they agree to is worthless, which puts the U.S. in a situation where action becomes the only option, which is probably what Iran knows, which is why they're setting up their forces to fight back, because they do not want to give up their ballistic missiles or their nuclear program.
What if you could clean your retainer at the touch of a button? No more brushing or tablets. Over 4 years ago, our team of engineers knew there had to be a quicker, easier, and more effective way to deep clean oral appliances. After scouring through the research, they discovered the hidden crisis. With the worldwide rise of oral appliance usage, unhygienic appliances had become an epidemic, with acid-producing bacteria eroding enamel and damaging teeth over time, causing serious harm to your oral health.
Their ballistic missiles or their nuclear program for some reason.
Let's talk about Iran with what's going on over there. Rob, what clips do you have on Iran? Rob, does he say 10 days Iran or no?
So now we may have to take it a step further, or we may not. Maybe we're going to make a deal. Well, you're going to be finding out over the next probably 10 days.
He waits till the last second to say.
Oh, so there's a deadline now.
So 10 days, Iran is going to find out. Randy, what do you think is going to happen here?
Well, I think they've got two choices. They're going to lose the nuclear weapons and they're going to lose the intercontinental ballistic missiles one way or the other. They can either give it up on their own or they can take it away. And this is why people need to care about this. I said it before. We all know nuclear weapon bad, but why intercontinental ballistic missile?
Right. That's the question. That's the question that doesn't jive with the idea of a peaceful civilian nuclear program. You see, Japan, they've got a peaceful civilian nuclear program, but they don't have intercontinental ballistic missiles. They do not have a delivery mechanism for that nuclear program, which is what an intercontinental ballistic missile is. That is not a defensive weapon. It doesn't defend anything. It is only built for offensive force projection. And if you have that and you can send a payload anywhere in the world and you've got a nuclear program, well, put the two and two together and everybody knows the answer to this question.
Iran has all the rockets they need if all they want to do is attack Israel. They proved that a few months ago. And frankly, they have all the rockets they need if they want to do attack Europe.
Oh.
Why do they need an intercontinental ballistic missile? That's a missile that goes far. The reason is so they have the ability to attack the United States. So why are they spending billions of dollars to create that missile? It isn't for Israel and it isn't for Europe. It's for us. And we can't allow that to happen. And here's why this is so important.
Do you want another North Korea? Because that's what's going to happen here. If you've got a nuclear program and you've got a delivery mechanism, you get Kim Jong-un again. And the world does not need another dictatorship that oppresses its own people and threatens its neighbors and threatens the rest of the world. That's bad for world stability. That's bad for world peace. We don't want to live in a world where evil despots are allowed to dig in their heels and entrench themselves for all eternity. That's why we're not having negotiations with North Korea on anything. Nobody's negotiating with them. They're doing their thing, and nobody can stop them. Do we want that again? I don't think so. But Russia, China, they would love to have a puppet state that is going to be around forever, that they can secretly support and prop up, who helps them create their new world order, their anti-dollar axis, where they fund their own mayhem and do what they want and project their force upon the rest of us.
Brett, how much ability does Iran have to impose costs to the United States in terms of striking our military bases?
Not what they will have.
Well,
if their deal doesn't go through.
From the Ukraine war, I spent a lot of time on the ground there. I can tell you drone warfare is relentless. It's this constant adaptation. It's electronic warfare layered over kinetic strikes, layered over cyber operations. Iran has been watching that. They learned a lot from Russia. They've seen how low-cost, high-volume drone warfare can grind down a technologically superior force. They've seen how electronic warfare, jamming drone swarms, it changes the battlefield. And I think, they've absolutely studied how Ukraine innovates in real time, where they've modified drones, shorten the kill chain, and they're trying to absorb those lessons and refine it for their own doctrine. But I think, the key difference here is Ukraine has been innovating out of necessity and defending their homeland, while Iran tries to adapt their drones for terrorism and regional destabilization. And I think our administration isn't going to put up with that.
Right. But here's the other part of this. If that's the threat today, what is the threat when we have a nuclear program and intercontinental ballistic missiles? That threat is different than the threat that we face today, which is still a threat. It's out there. It's dangerous. Rockets could be launched at U.S. military bases. Rockets could be launched at Israel. They've got something going on with the Russians right now that they are planning in secret. So we don't fully know what they're going to do. Are they going to make the first move? Are they getting into position to make a retaliatory move? That's probably their best bet. The only way that the world is going to get behind them in any sense, that any countries are going to say, hey, what the U.S. is doing is wrong, we need to stop this interventionism, is if Iran is not the aggressor. So they may be waiting to see if something happens, which is exactly what happened with their nuclear program when that was wiped out. And it looks like Trump is gearing up to do something soon.
It's Trump's warning to Iran.
Go for it.
Yeah, please. Yeah, right.
MGM Plus is available on YouTube. Press play on something new.
My boyfriend's missing. Please call me.
Get MGM Plus, HBO Max, Stars, and more. Find your favorite movies and TV on YouTube.
Yeah, please. Yeah, right.
Ron, bad things will happen. Ron doesn't need it. What will that?
I'm not going to talk to you about that.
If there is a US military.
We're gonna make a deal, or we're gonna get a deal one way or the other. I'm not gonna talk to you about that, but we're either gonna get a deal or it's gonna be unfortunate for them.
Deadline.
I would think that'll be enough time, 10, 15 days, pretty much maximum.
Pause it right there. Okay.
Okay, so 10 to 15 days to make a nuclear deal with the Iranians before something bad happens. Now, the question everybody's got is, will the United States stick to this deadline? Will the Iranians, with their moving around of their drones, their activity at their nuclear sites, could they do something that makes this deadline worthless or causes it to prematurely and suddenly expire before they even realize what's going on? These are the questions that everybody has, because a lot of the moves that Iran is making in secret, while they're out there saying, hey, we want to make a deal, hey, we're encouraged, we've got talks, we're willing to talk, we want to talk, they're doing all this stuff behind the scenes. That could flip some sort of a switch that causes things to happen sooner than the deadline we were just told by the president. Because the U.S. doesn't have 2 carrier battle groups headed to the Middle East to get some worthless agreement. That's not what this is about. This is not about achieving nothing. This is about achieving a decisive peace one way or another.
Exercises, which included vessel raids and ship seizures, and sent a notice to airmen not to fly over Iranian airspace during the drills, which could include cruise missiles. The U.S. is engaged in the largest military buildup in the Middle East since the eve of the Iraq War. The Pentagon has deployed more than 120 warplanes to the region, including 50 in the past 48 hours. F-15 fighter jets, stealth F-35s, KC-135 refueling tankers, and a squadron of F-22 Raptors.
This looks like Operation Desert Storm 2.0, this type of operation here. All this air power, all these carriers in one part of the world, what could that all possibly be for if it is not to achieve something suddenly and decisively? And this has been the U.S. playbook all along, not just in Desert Storm, but even as recently as the operation in Venezuela that saw dictator Maduro removed from his bedroom at 2 o'clock in the morning. U.S. forces went in there and achieved something remarkable quickly. And we could be looking at the same thing with Iran, but the stakes are much higher. These guys already have long-range weapons. And even though they don't have their own nuclear program, the regimes backing them up have their own nuclear programs. I'm talking about China and Russia. The full capability of this regime and what they're willing to do is something that is ambiguous. We see their actions. We see them fortifying nuclear sites. We see them rearranging the chairs on the deck of their sinking ship, so to speak, but we don't know what they're going to do. We don't know if they're going to go on offense. We don't know if they're going to launch some sort of attack. I think if they did that, it would be a big mistake. I think putting all these assets in place to potentially do something or to resist the United States in some way or to fight back is also a big mistake because it makes them look like a bad faith.
Hello. Hi.
Hey, long time listener. I just want to say I appreciate everything that you share with us and all your insight. You're the best. But I kind of have a question about what is America going to punch with China to the next administration after and knock out all the oil from underneath it? Because Elon Musk is saying how China is tripling their output of solar. So soon it seems like they're not going to need oil.
Well, my take is that oil has a higher density of energy than any other source of energy, and that solar is a lower density source. So modern society, especially manufacturing, is going to need high density oil. Plus you have problems with storing the solar energy. And most of these solar panels have to be in a field. Well, if you plaster a field, then you can't grow crops. So it hurts agriculture. And even if you could get the same power densities from solar panels, which you can't, but let's just say that you could, and you put them in the field, the solar panels will eventually leak these toxic types of metals into the soil over time and cause the soil to not be farmable. So long term, it's not better for society. So my take is that to have a very robust military and to have a very robust industrial base, you need higher density energy sources like oil, natural gas.
We live in what some would say kind of the future, right? I mean, there are technologies out there to supplement the high density output that oil provides us in a relatively safe form.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it is that it's going to be a portfolio. A good society is going to have a portfolio of energy sources, right? Not everybody needs to burn fossil fuel for everything. So if you're going to heating your, let's say, outdoor pool, it may be better to use a solar panel and a battery source to heat your pool. But if you're going to be driving a Caterpillar truck and you're building homes or building infrastructure, I don't think they should be run as an EV. They'd probably be better off running it as a combustion engine. Now, the way I see it is that there are an awful lot of people that are jumping on the bandwagon with EVs, but they're not robust. They just the powertrain, the battery life isn't as long as a combustion engine. Plus, the cars, not only are they not robust, they're too expensive. Too much electronics. So take a look at a Jeep, especially during World War II. A Jeep from World War II could last 20, 30 years. What EV could last 30 years? None. You'd be good if it lasts for 6 years. So I don't see that it's robust enough. I don't feel that a robust society is going to be 100% reliant on these alternative fuel sources. And I see oil and natural gas as a major source of our energy, but also it helps with pharmaceutical industry. The petrochemical industry is tied. That industry is also tied into oil, and also our fertilizer for agriculture is coming. The feedstock's coming from natural gas. You can't do that with solar panels or windmills or hydro. So and everyone needs their corn. Everyone needs to feed their cattle. So I think there are too many people that are misplaced with the understanding of what these renewable energy sources can really do. Now, that doesn't mean that all of it is bad. We can have some of it for parts of the society. But to demonize oil and natural gas, I mean, the society that we have today is heavily predicated on fossil fuels or these higher density energy sources like natural gas and oil, crude oil. I mean, we would not have the society that we have today. So just imagine if you wake up in the morning and all the oil and all the natural gas is gone. How are you going to heat your home? How are people going to make steel? How are they going to make iron? How are they going to have the structure to build homes or to build buildings? So we would snap into the 16th or 17th century very quickly if we didn't have crude oil and natural gas. You can't have the modern society that we have today without fossil fuels.
Yeah, I agree with you. On all points. My point was more a statement. Actually, it's more a question to get your opinion. It seems like China is the big boss here for the United States. And when after Venezuela, to knock out the energy. Now that they're going after Iran to knock out the energy, then maybe Russia, in some way.
Well, I mean, if we can control this is an interesting point that you're making. If the United States can control the oil flow out of the Middle East, then it forces China to buy energy sources from Russia. Now there are two main flows of energy into China. Main flows, not the only flows, but the main flows. The two main flows are from the Middle East and going around Asia and into Southeast Asia, and then imported that way. And then there's also energy sources that are coming from the northern passage through the Arctic and over from China and over to into Russia. Now that passage of energy is, especially LNG, that passage is only from July to October, maybe June to October. And then the passage is too frozen. The icebreakers can't break it. So the main source of energy for China seems to me coming from this region that's in conflict right now. Iran is a major source. So if the United States, and I think this is the reason why we want Greenland, is that we want to control the Northern Passage. And so if we can control the Northern Passage and put pressure on the actual energy flows into China, we block the northern front, and then we block the Middle Eastern flow. And if we can block the energy into China, then we can get them to capitulate so they don't attack Taiwan. Because it's looking like if we are successful in the Middle East, which it looks like we will be, we'll have casualties and we may even lose some ships. But the thing is it looks like we will be successful in the Middle East here. And if this is the case, then the chances of China being successful in taking Taiwan is diminished radically. Because we're going to be able to control the energy flow. And not only that, we're using this whole Middle Eastern conflict right now as a test bed for our technology. We're already using one-way drones as kamikaze drones into Iran. Well, that's a test bed for what we're going to do if China attacks Taiwan. Especially if we launch them from, either from frigates or from destroyers, to make sure that we're protecting our strike group. So this is what is happening here. It's not just knocking out the Ayatollah in Iran. This is shooting a shot over the bow of China and saying, hey, don't screw with the United States.
Here. Going back to the solar panels, there's no energy going to China from Venezuela. There's no energy going to China from the Middle East. They do have an excess generation of electricity through solar panels.
Right.
What can we do to control them?
Well, the thing is that once we cut off their energy and they're only using these quote sustainable energy sources like solar, how are they going to make steel? How are they going to make aluminum? Their whole industrial base is going to radically decline within 3 years. They can't do you can't do heavy industry with solar.
So it sounds like this could be a job of the next administration, assuming the right people are in.
Well, that's true. That's true. And that's exactly true. I mean, this is the reason why I think Trump has to kind of accelerate what he's doing in the world, because he only has 3 years, or a little less than 3 years, to do what he needs to do. Now, if we can get a Rubio or a J.D. Vance in to the White House and Congress is controlled by the Republican Party, I would think that we will continue on the successes from the Trump administration. But if the opposite is true, and there's a Democrat in the White House, and the House and the Senate is not controlled by the Republican Party, and it's controlled by the Democratic Party, most likely we're gonna see a soft international affairs policy with China, and then China will be able to reconstitute itself. But it's really important. Taking out the Ayatollah it's important, but it's just as important to make sure that the CCP is destroyed. They cannot exist, because if the CCP exists and they're successful, then there are going to be factions within the United States that are going to try to copy and paste that style of government here. And you can kind of almost see it already with the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is a socialistic party that is leaning more and more towards the communistic side to it. Like, look at what's happening in New York with Mondani. Mondani is literally a communist. So and I find it really odd that what Trump is being relatively successful in this, but you're having people on the other side of the aisle that are supporting the Democratic Party that are saying, "Oh, Trump is doing this illegal. He shouldn't be doing this." It's like everything he does, even if it's successful, they want to demonize him. I mean, if he cured cancer right now, they would say that it's bad. It's amazing. It's so obvious to me. It's so obvious that Trump is blessed.
I have a feeling, distinctly, that Trump is going to be the one to say, "I cure cancer" during his term, because we have a lot of cancer therapies now coming out that seem promising.
Right, but the point is that the point I'm making, I think that we have a lot of technology that hasn't been fully vetted and haven't been fully tested. But there's a lot of technology in military and biotech, and and in other industries that will move the United States forward into a very prosperous future, and even the whole world. If we all decide that we can put aside our differences, the whole world will benefit from this. All right, but the thing is there's too many factions, and there's too much conflict. We have a lot of technology, but we seem to not have, the world as a humanity hasn't grown up yet. It's still in its adolescence phase. But the point I'm making is that Trump, no matter what he does right, he's demonized by the other side of the aisle because they hate Trump. There are people out there that want Trump to fail. There are people in the United States that is looking at this and they're saying they want an aircraft carrier to be sunk. They want to see Trump fail. And that to me is just like insane. These people are insane. Did you watch the State of the Union address?
Yeah, I did. It was sad.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't even stand up for certain people when he was, tipping his hat to.
First time.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just. We need a country that comes together. We're going to have differences, but the thing is this is a constitutional republic that's based on the Enlightenment, which basically means that it's about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and the protection of property. Well, the Democratic Party doesn't want life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They want to tell you how to be happy. They want to tell you that, what you can own. Or maybe if they get everything that they want, you can't own anything and you just rent. But the reality of the situation is that their theoretical foundation of government is antithetical to the Enlightenment.
DrPaulCottrell, you're channeling Hooper big time here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I don't want to hold you anymore. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening, and thank you for asking for the money. And oh, by the way, I have a live show with John Hogue tonight, so if you want to listen in at 10 o'clock Eastern time.
John Hogue is a cool guy. I think he's a little bit out there for me. Personally, the esoteric stuff I'm totally on board with, but
right.
I mean, I do listen.
Right.
From time to time.
Well, it's important to realize that when I have people on my show, I don't necessarily align to their thoughts 100%.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to have conversations with people that may differ in how I feel. And I have people that, that do agree with me 100%. But I think that the key is to have dialogue. And, and in the end, in the future, we're going to have a prosperous world for everybody. But the thing is that people on the right side need to stand tall and not allow for socialism to take hold, because we're going to lose our constitutional freedoms when that happens. Socialists don't believe in a constitutional republic by the very definition of socialism. So, we need to hold steady on this. And I think that what's happening right now in the world is biblical. It's biblical. And Trump is definitely blessed, and anyone that wants to go against Trump, and he's being blessed by a higher power. I mean, it seems that, that it's not going to turn too good for anyone going against Trump, because you're really going against a higher power.
Yes, I agree with you, but it also seems that sometimes Trump is a tool of something. Like, through him, change is being made.
Yeah, I mean, I see what your point is. Trump is a flawed character, but flawed characters could still be blessed too. And there are people that are non-flawed characters that aren't blessed, that have tried to make big differences in the world and couldn't. So, if I was a betting man, which I am, I would put my chips on Trump, because I think something big and positive is going to come out of this.
I will hope and pray that from here on forward, there'll be peace in the Middle East. That's something I've wished on my birthdays every year. Peace in the Middle East and in the world. That'd be great.
Yeah, but I think it will. But the thing is you got to root out the cancer. You got to root out the cancer, and sometimes you have to do. When you're rooting out the cancer, sometimes you're damaging other tissues. But it's going to happen. We're going to root out the cancer, and the world will be a better place, and hopefully in our lifetime. But even if it's not, even if we don't see it in our lifetime, we have laid the foundation for future generations to have that world peace, and that is our legacy.
Sorry.
All right. Well, thank you for calling in and asking for the mic.
I'm welcome.
All right. You too. Bye-bye. All right. Explosions heard in Dubai, Bahrain, and Doha. Let's listen into BBC.
Yeah, I mean, that will be something under consideration. Bahrain's National Security Council, for example, would have been discussing exactly that. I mean, they haven't experienced anything like this before. I lived in Bahrain in the 90s, and I was there during the Gulf War of 1991. There were a few Iraqi scuds that came over. There was one that hit Bahrain, for example, just across the water in Saudi Arabia. And Riyadh did experience scud attacks, as well as Tel Aviv, back then in the 90s from Iraq. But there was nothing like what they're having now, with airports being hit with drones. And of course, drones didn't really exist back then. In the 2003 Iraq invasion, the Iraqi army crumbled very quickly. So there was no time for anything like this. Last year, there was in June a retaliatory hit by Iran against the US base at Abu Dhabi in Qatar, but it was a pretty small attack, and they telegraphed it in advance. They said that they pretty much said, we're going to do a total retaliation for the US attack on Natanz, Isfahan, and Fordow, the nuclear sites. And there was practically no damage or casualties. This is very different. I think Iran has crossed a line here, a red line, in the minds of most of the Gulf Arab governments. Oman accepted. Oman has managed to stay friends with both the West and Iran, and they've been wringing their hands in horror at this. The Omani foreign minister has said he is dismayed by this. But I've been reading, I've been getting the emails from public relations departments of Gulf governments like Saudi and UAE and Bahrain. They're really angry at this. They are condemning this. And I think they're going to find it very difficult to have anything like normal relations again with the Islamic Republic if the Islamic Republic survives.
Yes, and that's what my next question actually is going to be to you, Frank, because we've seen what's happened. The Supreme Leader has gone. We all know that the succession process is a opaque one. It's unclear how it will move forward, who will take over. But one thing is clear, there's not going to be the regime change that Benjamin Netanyahu and President Trump talked about with just missiles being fired from Israel and from American warships. We haven't seen any sign of renewed protests in Iran. What's the next move, do you think, for those who want to see an end to this regime?
Well, of course, one of the reasons why there aren't protests is that people are simply taking shelter from the bombs. They're doing exactly what President Trump told them to, which is to sort of shelter in place, essentially. But of course, he did also say, seize the day, carpe diem. This is your moment. This is an absolutely terrifying time for ordinary Iranians because, in January, they faced the bullets and battens of the security forces. Now they're facing the bombs of Israel and the United States, two of the most sophisticated military powers in the world. So, I don't think anybody's going to be coming out on the streets when bombs are raining down from the sky. The big question is, what do the security forces in Iran do? The reason why the regime has been able to stay in place, it's not because it's popular, it's because the security forces, the men with the guns, to put it bluntly,
exactly.
have got a vested interest.
The IRGC is really what is protecting and propping up the theocratic regime. And this is the reason why it is not just important to knock out the Ayatollah and the supreme leader, but it's also to get the IRGC to capitulate and degrade and destroy their capability. Now, how far will they dig in? Will they collapse like when we attacked Iraq? Or will they be more entrenched? I suspect that they'll be more entrenched compared to the military operations that we had in Iraq. But as long as the people within Iran, the secular people in Iran, push back on the government and the IRGC, then the chances of the IRGC collapsing increases. Now, will that take 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a few months? Who knows? We don't. We're seeing this in real time. We don't know. But as long as the people are in the country of Iran want to take back their government and to have a democracy, a constitutional republic, instead of being enslaved by a theocratic regime, if they do that, then the chances of the IRGC collapsing increases, especially when you have Israel, you have the United States knocking and degrading the IRGC, and then you have other Arab nations getting pissed off at Iran. All right. With that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Please help support the work that I do. All right? By helping the channel, it allows it to grow, and I can inform the public on how to improve their health, but also on how to navigate what's going on in the news and how it may affect your life, especially in terms of finances. All right? This is definitely going to affect the financial markets on Monday, for sure. 100%. I guarantee it. It's going to affect the financial markets. Now, I'm going to tell you how to benefit from it or how to mitigate the risk. All right? So stay tuned on my Monday morning show, and we're going to be live talking about how to manage the oil shock that's going to be hitting the financial markets. But please help support the work that I do by getting the great supplements and improving your health. I have this supplement called Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients. It is a very comprehensive compound profile shown on the screen here. You can read the label on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take this every day, and this is going to help to slow down the aging process. But it focuses on many different systems of your body. Helps with brain function, helps with cardiovascular health, helps with musculature, brings down inflammation, soaks up free radicals, And when you do this on a regular basis, you're slowing down the aging process and you're getting healthier. You're going to have more longevity and more energy. This helps with cellular metabolism. So take it every day. This is a month supply. It's a powder. You mix it with soft foods. I mix it with hummus, but you can mix it with yogurt or applesauce. You can mix it with water or even with a smoothie, right? But take this every day. Now, if you do a little bit of calorie restriction, exercise, and take this, this is a great way to also lose weight if you need to lose weight. Now, if you're an athlete, taking this as a pre or post workout fuel source is going to help you with your sport. And you can stack this with heirloom barley or gladiator barley if you want to. So please go to my store, take this every day, get healthy. You're going to feel the effects of this and you're going to have a steady burn of energy throughout the whole day, no spiking of energy. And you're going to notice the effects of this once you start taking it within 72 hours. You're going to have more vitality and you're going to have more energy and you're going to be more active. So please go to my store, get the Boomer Boost. All right. With that, let's listen into Al Jazeera here.
To accept that two powers like the United States and Israel decide to change the regime and the population of Iran will support it.
Ibrahim, the thing is, there's a lot of uncertainty because Khamenei coalesced so much power. The thing is, there's also no credible opposition, is there?
Yes, well, first let's agree that the assassination of Khamenei is a huge blow for the regime. It's not an easy thing. I mean, the Khamenei, he's one of the founders of the revolution. So his death resembles actually the end of the generation of the revolution. So on that level, so it is important. And yes, as my colleague said, there is a frustration within the system. Within certain communities, but in the absence, absolutely back to your question on of a credible opposition within Iran that to stand out and present itself as a credible alternative, then this leads to the regime strengthening itself, and also that the opposition abroad, it's represented by the son of the Shah. He resembles an age where the Iranian people revolted against him. So that's one. And two, also the close ties with Israel that he has with Netanyahu. This is not appealing to the Iranian people. On the contrary, I think he's shooting himself in the foot and undermining his credibility being as an alternative or a credible alternative. So we haven't seen even of the key opposition leaders abroad. Actually, some of them during those times, actually they put their differences aside with the regime. So where is the credible alternative leader here, or a system to present a revolution to present itself as an alternative to the regime? So that's another reason actually why the regime is still strong. And until
what's interesting here is you have Shiite and Sunni. Sunni is more like Saudi Arabia. Shia is more Iranian Muslim belief system. Doha is where Al Jazeera is coming from. Now, the way Al Jazeera is with its media is obviously pro-Islam or, pro-Middle Eastern states, anti-Israel, anti-American. But you had Iran that actually is bombing the country that Al Jazeera's headquarters is at. So this is what I was saying back in 2023, when right after October 7th. You're going to see not only the ultra-liberal in the United States and around the world eat its own tail, but you're going to also see that there's going to be infighting that's going to be taking place within the Muslim world, and they're going to be fighting each other. And the ones that have aligned with Israel and the United States, aligned with the soul root of Jacob, because many of the Muslim nations are coming from the soul root of Ishmael, but there's also an element of Esau in it. All right? So the ones like Saudi Arabia, if they align with the United States and with Israel, there's going to be a blessing there. And it's going to allow them to fight this negative soul root of Ishmael and the Persians. All right? So you're seeing in real time, Iran is creating the infighting, which is already built in between the Shia and the Sunni conflict. But just international politics and international affairs, you're seeing that these nations that are being bombed by Iran, by being hit by Iran with its missile capability, they're going to have to align with the United States and Israel. So Iran is putting themselves in a corner here. It's not going to turn out well for Iran. Now, how long it takes, I don't know. But the thing is that Iran's not going to succeed in this. But it's interesting in how the media of Al Jazeera is so anti-American or anti-Israeli and so pro-Palestinian, pro-Gazan, pro-Hezbollah, pro-Hamas, right? That they're caught in between now. Are they going to be pro-Iranian? Or are they going to be more pro-fight against Iran? All right? So they're having a problem being able to do these shows because they don't know what side they need to spin the news. Doha's being attacked by Iran. It's very interesting because I've been watching Al Jazeera for a while, right? So, and I compare these different news networks. Al Jazeera is in a pickle. It's a catch-22 situation for them. They don't know how to spin this. They hate Trump, they hate America, they hate Israel, but the one that they're trying to position to be in support of is actually bombing their home country. It's fascinating in how things are playing out ever since October 7th of 2023. Just look at this whole arc. 2023 all the way to 2026. Think about how much has happened. All right? What has happened between this period of time? All of the military experts out there that, kind of aren't very happy with Trump, were happy with the United States and have been talking trash, like Ritter and like Mearsheimer and others. They go on these podcasts and say the United States is going to be caught in a quagmire and the Israeli military is going to be decimated by Hamas and Hezbollah. Did that happen? No. Why? Why? Because when you're doing things for the right reason, there's a blessing that comes down. And so all these military experts that hate Trump, they got it wrong. Just like all of these economists that hate Trump got it wrong on tariffs. They thought that inflation would skyrocket because of tariffs. It didn't skyrocket by tariffs. If anything, easy money from the Federal Reserve causes inflation more than tariffs. And all the economists got it wrong in April of last year. When the market tanked, and they kept on saying that, the dollar is going to weaken and no one's going to invest in the U.S. stock market. And the stock market rallied 20%. Going against Trump is stupid because you're going against a blessing. All right? So, but you look at the last 3 years, October 7th of 2023, all the way to now. Hamas destroyed. Hezbollah destroyed. The leadership in Syria overthrown and more aligned with the West. And we're literally seeing the Ayatollah has been decapitated. And now we're seeing the actual erosion of the IRGC. Now, how long it takes to fully collapse, I'm not sure yet. But it's going to be this year. This all happened in such a short amount of time because Arabs thought that they could attack Israel. They thought that they could go against Western culture. They thought that they were going to be able to push a caliphate. They failed. They failed. They failed miserably. And there's many presidents out there that weren't willing to do the right thing, or they were afraid, or whatever. They're worried about the economy, or worried about oil, or whatever. We're one of the largest energy producers in the world. We got so much oil and natural gas, we don't know what to do with it all. We're export a lot of it, especially LNG. Bottom line is this. The United States took a bold move. And when you're bold, and you're not fearful, good things can happen. And we just saw it. So all these military experts that hate Trump, like Scott Ritter, they got it wrong. Hezbollah just started evaporating after the cell phone bombs. So, the bottom line is this. A lot of these experts that are on these podcasts, and they're talking trash that the United States is, going to fail in this. It's not. It's not going to fail. That doesn't mean that it's going to be a bed of roses. But the thing is that we're not going to fail. You know why? Because it's our birthright. We hold the line because we are the country of the Enlightenment.
For watching, you can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/
Please go to my store and get the C60. This is a very strong antioxidant. It's part of my protocol to slow down the aging process and to boost up your immune system and your endocrine system. You can get it in extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, or MCT coconut oil. Now, C60 is a molecule. It's a carbon there's 60 carbons together. It looks like a soccer ball. The molecule is called a fullerene or a buckyball. But what happens with that molecule is that it soaks up free radicals almost 1,000 times stronger than an individual molecule of vitamin C. So that means that you're soaking up free radicals, improving the health of your mitochondria. You're going to have more energy. And again, part of aging is less energy. Well, if you can improve your energy levels and improve your mitochondrial health, you're slowing down the aging process. But not just that. By soaking up free radicals within the cell, the cells and the tissues will be healthier. They'll perform better. So your organ systems will perform better. Your vascular system, you're soaking up free radicals and reducing inflammation, you're reducing plaque formation. And when you're reducing the stress in the neuron, your neurons are healthier. You'll have better positive neuroplasticity. So you're going to be thinking faster. Your neurons will be more connected. You'll have healthier mitochondria within the neuron, and your neurons need to produce lots of ATP to make those neurotransmitters. So you'll have better brain health. So please go to my store, get the C60, take this every day, take a teaspoon a day, every day. And this is a major cornerstone to slowing down the aging process, boost up your immune system, improve your endocrine system, help with your glands like your thyroid, and help with your vascular system, brain function. So if you follow my advice and take the supplements that I've been taking for years, you're going to slow down the aging process and get healthy. Take a teaspoon a day, every day. All right? I've been doing this with C60, teaspoon a day, every day, since 2016. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. That's the end of my broadcast for today. I've been going for probably close to 4 hours or so. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for tonight at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. I will have John Hogue live. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.